Good evening, everyone. Our next plenary session is Net Zero, the South Asia model. And for that session, I would like to invite to the stage Van Nguyen, Deputy Resident Representative, UNDP Bangladesh. Mohammad Babu, President, Editors Guild and Chief Editor, Ekattor TV. Hadza Min Fadli Robi, Assistant Professor of International Relations, Islamic University of Indonesia. Mr. Abdul Haq, Honorary Consul of the Republic of Djibouti in Bangladesh. Mr. Iqbal Habib, Environmental Activist and Architect, Bangladesh. And the session will be moderated by Dr. Rashid Al Mahmoud Titubir, Chairman and Professor, Department of Development Studies, University of Dhaka. I would like to request all the panelists to come to the stage. Thank you.
Very good afternoon. I think we are having an excellent brainstorming sessions and we are charged up after the coffee break. So let's talk about something which is, as you see, that the dust are settling on the Red Sea town of Sharm el Sheikh, which I don't know exactly what would be the translation of Arabic, but to my mind it's a Bay of Wise. So we had a deal which speaks of, since 1992, particularly the small island developing states has been talking about loss and damage. So after the talks spreading over more than 40 hours, they have decided to have a pact on loss and damage. But to our utter disappointment, the talks has not really delivered what the world has aspired in terms of addressing the climatic catastrophe, which is the path towards 1.5 degrees Celsius. In Glasgow, the nation states agree to have a pathway of having the peak in 2025 and then moving towards net zero. They have also talked about adaptation. They also talked about the international organizations like reform of the World Bank, as it seems to be at the helm of the World Bank there is someone. It is unclear whether the science has taken the decision making in World Bank, and there are lots of doubts that has been expressed in media in terms of Mr. Malpass. So we saw that terrain, and UN Secretary General has to say, despite all the criticism and the brinkmanship of multilateralism, the UN Secretary General has always been vocal about climate change, and he has categorically said that we are in emergency room. So we have to act now and decisively. So to discuss that topic, we have an excellent minds with us and representing different agencies, strata and media. we would have benefited having a kind of a gender disparity. Unfortunately, we do not have it, and we regret for that. But having said that, so what we would do, the format would be 5 minutes initial comments, then we'll move towards a question and answer, and we'll wrap up. And given the time of 50 minutes, we would try to be on the dot. So let's start with, as I mentioned, UN Secretary General has been very vocal, and different UN agencies, particularly those targeted with doing environment, UNFCCC and UNCBD and UNCDD. So this is right now, we are at the 50 years of the first Environment Convention. As we recall, it was in Sweden. The nation states gathered together to have a kind of a global effort in addressing the environment issues. Then we had, I think, one of the best charters that UN has produced after Bill of Rights was 3 sister conventions. One on climate change, then the other on biodiversity, and the third one on desertification. And that convention particularly provides the unique characteristics of common but differential responsibilities and respective capacities. So now I would really ask Von Nooyen, if I pronounced you correctly, Deputy Resident Representative UNDP Bangladesh, to shed us how do the UN assess the outcome of the Sharm el-Sheikh, and also connecting with the incoming convention that would take place in Montreal, COP15 on biodiversity. So how do you see it as an UN organization in terms of really providing us a livable earth? So over to you, Von Nooyen.
Thank you so much, and a very good evening to all. Thank you so much for being here with us to have a very important conversation, even though it's late. And as our moderator was saying, that we are in the room of emergency. It is, but it is so sad to see that many people are still denying that there's no such a thing as a climate change. So as a part of the UN family, you may know that United Nations Development Programs, we have a flagship human development report, which produced almost every year, where we look at the human development indexes and to see how the countries are doing in terms of not only economic growth, but also in terms of human development. And last year, or in 2020, the first time ever that we bring in the climate change aspect, the environment aspect, to see whether the country is doing well in terms of human development. So this is to say that as a part of the UN family, we are advocating for countries in the world to realize that looking at economic growth alone will not serve us. And we are actually, for the first time ever, that last year, the human development actually having the reversal. 9 out of 10 countries, 9 out of 10 countries actually going backwards, including Bangladesh. So we fell from 128 to 129. Very little, but we went backward. Why is that? Because the fact of the matter is that the political landscape is not conducive for the conversation. Developing countries, developed countries, there's still a lot of debates. Now, if we talk about, for example, Bangladesh is talk about development deficits. We say that in order for the country to develop, to grow, we need such ODA. The developed country, they are committed to the climate change agenda. And then they are focusing on the climate change deficit. And they try to change, they try to take the climate change deficit instead of development deficit. And for us, we say, no, you cannot supplement. We cannot substitute. We have to address both. So unfortunately, it was not very successful so far. Sharm el-Sheikh is really a situation where finally, there's one light that we are happy about, is that we have the loss and damage fund finally approved. But many things that we have been giving, talking. And I really believe that COP is the forum for many policymakers to raise a voice, to make decisions. But it is, I see politicals plays a very important role in that one, and therefore the talkage has continued, and the reality has not come to the people, to the benefit of the people. So,
thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Von. You see, as Von was saying about science, and then that comes with the issue of, particularly in these age of social media, the idea of alternative facts, disinformation, misinformation, and concentration of media. So it is quite really important, in order to have a science-based decision making, the media plays a major role, both conventional media and the social media. And we have seen the power of Twitter, Facebook, and others in terms of really building opinions. So I would now request Mr. Muzammil Babu, Chief Editor, Ekattur TV, how does this mobilization of opinion building takes place when it is very difficult and the areas are sometimes very gray, what is fact and what is not fact? So how do media really plays? And then media is also susceptible to risk in terms of its advertisement, and huge amount of advertisement comes from the fossil fuel groups. And you have seen, for the first time, it has crossed, if you look at the fossil fuel lobbyist, it was more than 25% that we have seen in Glasgow. So how do you really bring the truth, and how media plays into it? So it would be none other than Muzammil Babu to respond to it as a living journalist who really does it 24/7. Over to you.
The moderator Titumir Bhai and distinguished guests, I didn't understand how do I fit into this topic, but now I understand. He dragged me to the river to fit into the topic. But one thing he doesn't know, 35 years ago, I got a graduation degree from Engineering University.
So that's
and in civil engineering, two majors, structure and environment. 35 years ago, people didn't understand much about the implication of environment, but due course, you understand that after the publication of IPCC report, it came into being. And this is media which brought this forward to the general public. Politicians came at last. Now, politicians have joined this campaign, but they are again taken aback by the fossil fuel lobby. This is true for Bangladesh. If I come to the context, South Asia is actually one homogeneous belt, though we are divided into few countries. So what I understand from this, I'm actually a political commentator, but climate change is the biggest politics ever. So in this climate change, if the South Asia partners, if you don't combine together, if you don't combine our resources together, we cannot achieve the goal of 1.5 degrees Celsius or net zero by 2050 or even 2070. The situation is even worse now. With the Ukraine-Russia war, we are put to a situation, some of the countries are even rolling back to coal-based power plants. So when they at least move from coal-based to less emission-prone gas technologies, LNG-based technologies, now they are rolling back to coal. This is a big fear for this part of the world, India, Bangladesh. So Bangladesh set a goal and they are rolling back from their goal. So due to the influence of the fossil fuel group, Bangladesh even couldn't achieve their goal of 10% renewable energy. Out of 25,000 megawatt installed capacity, we had a goal of 2,500 megawatt. We achieved only 250. So this is the power of the fossil fuel group, lobbyist group, or who has stake in this. Now, under these circumstances, on the eve of Ukraine war, the lack of energy, lack of fossil fuel, this could be, in hindsight, ma'am, this could be an opportunity for the first time for this part of the world. If fossil fuels were available, we would have availed it anyway. And the lobbies would have been so strong. They would say there is no space, no land for solar, Bangladesh wind mapping shows no hope, rivers are, big cup type area is inundated, producing, the capacity is only 230 megawatt, they are producing probably 50 megawatt. So under these circumstances, this war gives us an opportunity, we all, the civil society and media together, if we go for this campaign that use this opportunity of the fossil fuel beyond our reach. The price is so high, we can't even reach. I am organizing a campaign for Bangladesh. Daytime, no fossil fuel. We start with this. Daytime, we have 120,000 megawatt hour requirement, 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. And this can be done with 30,000 megawatt solar power. 30,000, we have 4 hour exposure to sun. This alone can solve our 50% problem. And this, we are proposing this as a special incentive to Bangladesh since we need dollar at this moment. So this could be a $30 billion FDI for Bangladesh. Daytime solar, 30,000 megawatt, $30 billion FDI will change the whole landscape. Let's utilize this war to use our resources towards renewable. Now fossil fuel lobbyists are little trailing. They don't have much to offer. Let's take this opportunity. And here, one more important thing, South Asia individual countries, especially like Bangladesh, we can't solve this problem alone. Renewable energy, we don't have enough river to create hydro. Our wind mapping is not favorable. We don't have non-cultivatable land as such. So here, if South Asia comes together and build a regional green corridor, and we can produce hydro from Nepal, Bhutan, and other places. We can produce, there are places where 6 to 7 hours sun in India, so we can get solar from there, and we can have exchange, we can have a grid, and that combined. And I would thank the organizer to take up this issue in the Bay of Bengal initiative, because this is the problem, others' problems are too big to solve. This problem is the need of the hour, and this problem, if Nepal, Bhutan, and along with India, if we combine together, we can solve it. Bangladesh, while negotiating with India, Bangladesh may not have enough river to produce hydro, but we can join rivers, we can negotiate, like Tipaimuk. 15 years back, 10 years back, when Tipaimuk issue came, some of the media went against Tipaimuk for some reason, but I was the only lone guy in favor of Tipaimuk, because if water is not diverted at Tipaimuk, it helps Bangladesh more than anybody, because it solves the problem in Howrah area, flooding problem in Howrah area, and at the same time we get 1,000 megawatt. So let's sit with India and others, common rivers, let us produce hydro as much as possible. And for Bangladesh, we'll present a paper soon and circulate to all of you who are here, utilizing the opportunity of fossil fuel price hike. Fossil fuel lowest is 20 taka kilowatt hour in Bangladesh, if it is even coal, but we can get solar at 10 taka. This is the opportunity. This is the opportunity. Let's use it and create a regional connectivity to solve this problem together. Thank you all.
Thank you, thank you, thank you, Mr. Mozammel Babu, for coming up with a propositional idea about transforming crisis into a possibility. Now let's really look at the industry side. Industries are running what has come to be known as greenwashing. They are at the forefront suggesting that we are making headways. But unfortunately what we see, and particularly in the backdrop of Ukraine conflict, the planned expansion even in USA as well as European Union's or European countries' interest in exploring gas in Africa, we haven't seen a transformative pathway. But it is the private sector as an engine of growth has to really act. So how does this kind of rhetorics could really transform into reality, while if the planned the gas projects would go on, then it would add more than 5 times of the gas supply that Russia is not giving the Europe. So it's a catastrophic proposition. Simultaneously, in the name of, say, greening the economy, there are also critics who are suggesting that this would also emit huge amount of carbon dioxide. And we have not seen any new commitment in terms of nationally determined contribution in COP27. So how do you see this? Particularly, it is always good to have a north-south divide. It is equally, and for the right reason of the climate justice. But how do we really act in our home state in terms of, say for example, Bangladesh could really have because we have some platinum, environmental platinum factories which could build image, but while Rana Plaza cost us serious cost to the economy. So how do you see that, the transition going and moving beyond rhetorics? So I would request Mr. Abdul Haq, who was very kind enough to join us at the last moment, because we were supposed to have a former FBCCI president, but he was, it's kindness of Mr. Abdul Haq, who had been a director in FBCCI, which is the apex body of the industries and association, and he has been also with the Japan. I'm not saying Japan is an elephant in the room, but obviously one of the largest financier of fossil fuel across the globe. And right now it is the largest one. So over to Mr. Abdul Haq.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Honorable Chairman and respected panelists, ladies and gentlemen, distinguished audience. Actually, what I wanted to say, Mr. Mozammel Babu has taken my words, that for Bangladesh, I think our challenges are really great, because we are a densely populated country. Governments are always fighting with ever-rising population, education, food security, transportation, etc. But this sophisticated subject, net zero, is definitely a matter of concern. What we feel from the private sector to invest in this area is very, very difficult, because private sector will always see rate of return, rate of interest, investment, etc. But here with the global family, or the global authorities, global concerns and institutions will have to think, and they are thinking, of course. What we can see from Bangladesh, that this opportunity, as Mr. Babu was very correctly mentioning, now the opportunity for regional and sub-regional cooperation has emerged more than any time else in the past. For example, alone Bangladesh cannot mitigate many of the issues. For example, China was the largest consumer of fossil fuel after United States of America. Now China has overtaken in the technological development of electric vehicle, public transportation, the electric train, etc. More than anyone in the world, I think China is growing very faster. They've invested trillions of dollars in this area. Whereas other countries are lagging far behind, even developed countries like, I will consider even Japan is lagging far behind in China in the area of green energy concept. For Bangladesh as a small country is very difficult. India is also investing quite good. They are investing in public transportation. Already public buses and trucks they are converting. For Bangladesh, I think we shall have to have sub-regional cooperation. Like the northeastern states, the historical proximity of this part of the India was that the Bay of Bengal was the actually warm water for states like Assam, Tripura, West Bengal, the part of Darjeeling and Himachal Pradesh and Nagaland, Mizoram, etc. This must come as a priority for now for us, that to uplift the people's life, to mitigate the emission issue. I think this is a very big issue that Bangladesh and the Indian government should consider, and the states of this area should consider. And another thing I want to mention that at the moment in our country, government has given facilities to import, more of electric vehicles and hybrid vehicles we are importing nowadays. So we are gradually, government is supporting us by reducing import duty and etc. We are also, government is doing pretty good. I think we are almost going for 60 to 70% vehicles are nowadays, other than the commercial vehicles, like big trucks, lorries or buses. Private vehicles are mostly now going for, hybrid and electric vehicles. So perhaps we are going on the right track, but as a whole, a comprehensive long-term solution must be a global issue, must be a regional issue. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Abdul Haq, for your intervention. So now I would move to architect Iqbal Habib, who is a civil society activist. So as we see, and the data suggests that every day fossil fuel industry makes a profit of $1 billion. And if we are really to do it, in case of Bangladesh, that's also proportionally true. And what we also see that there are issues that are not within our reach. Say for example, high population density in a country like Bangladesh. We are the 8th largest country in the world. And while civil society has been actively engaging at the process and brought climate justice at the center of the discourse, and there are movements. So how do you really see in terms of transformation? How happy are you with the outcome of COP27? And how do you really see that while putting your feet on the ground of Bangladesh? So Mr. Iqbal Habib, who is an architect and who is also the Joint Secretary of Bangladesh Poribesh Andolon, right?
Thank you. Thank you. I just want to refer a couple of points from COP27, what we so far achieved. It was a commitment from Paris Agreement that we'll go back only 1.5 degree above the pre-industrial level, but that is not yet in act. The reason is, end of the day, there was only commitments and dialogues, But that particular notion has completely been avoided. Yes, of course, there was a lollipop came out of this, which is called Fund for Loss and Damage, and they make a transitional committee for that. Of course, the transitional committee will make recommendations on how to operationalize both the new fundings arrangements and of course the next huge same kind of gathering in COP28 next year. And there was new pledges and Sharm el-Sheikh adaptation agenda, which is saying that we have to enhance the resilience for the people living in the most climate vulnerable communities in 2030. So actually at the end of the day, lack of mentioning how the fossil fuels or the need to phase out those fossil fuels driven industrialization down to keep the global temperature from rising is not yet decided. This is a hocus pocus, and we are all part of it, engaging and dancing around it. Like the Glasgow summit, where I was present with Greta Thunberg on a sit on activism, where Greta Thunberg was shouting that our house is on fire, believe us, it is on fire. But yet, this summit also does not go further to call for a phase out of all fossil fuels, including oil and gas. Rather, in the name of Ukraine war, Germany and France went back to fossil fuel driven electricity generations. And they're saying we have no other choice. As if only us, what the sufferers, has a choice. It is time to come back to focus on our ability, on our resources, on our adaptation, mobilization to fight against this. We cannot wait for the Godot anymore. It is end of discussion. And if it is so, I think when I see the open up of dialogue between US and China is going to happen, there is nothing, no outcome we can expect who are the sufferers. So what we can do, I think 50% of the people will be in cities, in town, because of the climate refugees. And it is happening to Dhaka every year with 7 to 10% per year. And we cannot afford to talk in our depth or plan like that, that we cannot let them come in. We have to. We have to prepare ourselves. And I have 6 agenda where we should refocus our priorities, our attention in every aspect. If we really believe it is not the net zero lollipop, it is survival of countries like Bangladesh. First, our investment on low carbon building materials, building industry, building technique, and clean energy as much as possible. Yes, I am completely in agreement with Mozammel Babu. We have to have a regional, this Bay of Bengal region can make a synergy because of India has that kind of radiation, solar irradiation, which is not in Bangladesh available. We have hydrological powerhouse, Bhutan and Nepal. We can make a synergy if we want to share the advantage of Bay of Bengal, because Bangladesh is having that advantage as a frontier. We can make a bondage, we can make a regional solution within ourselves without looking at those Western countries or China-US dialogue. Second, we have to come up with focus, public transportation modality as our main communication hub, communication solution. We cannot afford anymore this private car-driven, yes, just 1 minute, private car-driven solutions. We must come to NMT and walkable cities as soon as possible. We must have waste management reduction by recycling everything, and that is also an industrial revolution for us. And improving air quality, besides that, our flood resistance drainage, water conservation, and clean water. By the way, we don't want clean water, the potable water, Every time we are having our shower and washing our clothes, we have to think in this line. And I think end of the day, it is not growth we want progress. It is not the development we want. We want development with sustainability, with inclusiveness, and definitely we want commitment, not no more commitment, but actions. And we have to be of our own. That is the motto I got from this COP27. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Iqbal Habib, and particularly in terms of coming up with certain areas of cooperation in Bay of Bengal region. So, as we have seen that sometimes in COP there are make and break situation, and there are situations when US climate envoy and the Chinese climate envoy was saying that our doors were shut. So there are geopolitical shadows that overcast the negotiation. Then we also see, after Mr. Biden's speech, there was a meeting between President Xi and President Biden face to face after both getting their one being elected, the another getting the third term. And we have seen certain movements. So that meeting happens in Indonesia, as you recollect, in Bali. So we have a panelist from Indonesia, from the International Relations Department. So we used to know, and Indonesia being the country and origin of non-aligned movement, now we are moving towards certain club processes like G20 in a state of really United Nations. And these G20s are really, in some cases, making and breaking the ideas that advances in some circumstances really reverses the progress. So how do you rate the discussion in G20 with respect to climate change agenda? And did you see any kind of a movement towards really addressing the issue, though there are tall talks even by President Biden while he was talking about it, simultaneously he was granting permission in terms of new explorations. China is the largest emitter of the greenhouse gases, and then India made a intervention of phasing out of carbon. But that discussion didn't take place, while China and India, as we know in Glasgow, were not talking about phasing out, but phase down of fossil fuel. So how do you see that, and how that discussion is relevant in terms of Bay of Bengal? So over to Hadjamin Fadil Robi, if I have pronounced you correctly. If I'm not, I'm really sorry.
Thank you very much, Professor Rashid Tutumir. So here I'd like to provide some Indonesian perspective to the case of G20 that has just been concluded in Bali, and we have handed over the presidency to India next year. And what I'm seeing from G20 summit in the past few weeks is that there's only some symbolical result, as the end of the discussions between the environmental ministers. And Indonesia is trying to commit itself to a more green and sustainable development agenda. But the thing is that while there are 100 billion per year US dollar that will be dedicated for this energy transition program, a lot of questions need to be asked in this matter. The first thing is that while Indonesia has tried to commit itself to the just energy transition program, we, as part of Indonesian civil society, really need to ask whether this money will be used in a proper manner. I mean, the corruption has become a case, a very widespread case in Indonesia, especially in regards to development. And when a lot of money has been transferred and also has been managed as a way to transform the energy usage from the carbon-driven to the clean one, one of the questions that should be asked, whether this usage of the money would be a transparent one. Would the civil society be able to monitor the usage of this money? Because many cases surrounding the international donors has also been corrupted by many local politicians in Indonesia, and this is something that also happening in many developing countries as well. Second thing is that while many people are talking about the usage of electrical vehicles, yeah, as an opposition to the usage of the carbon fuel-based vehicles, we need to talk about the impact of the nickel mining that has been happening in Indonesia for so many years. Recently, from 2015 to 2022, there has been a lot of Chinese investment, a lot of investment from Western countries as well, that would like to exploit many natural resources area, and also has impacted to the natural surroundings. And this has brought impact to the civil society as well. People might get more money because of the nickel mining that will be used then to power up the Tesla vehicles and or other electrical vehicles. But we need to see that the environmental damages from this energy transition is inevitable. And several societies in East Indonesia, for example, has suffered from skin-related diseases because of these unhealthy practices of mining nickels that goes against the international standards. And another thing is that the transition to clean energy is not something that could be done suddenly in a prompt manner. Why? Because most of the electrical supplies in Indonesia is coming from steam and also coming from coal-based plants, and that is why we will need more time to transform the energy usage, the energy resources, and it should not be an abrupt transition. It should be a very long-phased transition process. And one thing that I'd like to emphasize is actually on how we can involve more younger generation. I think that more youth people are becoming activists in this manner, but we need more action than just becoming an activist. Because we know that there are people like Greta Thunberg and also several other youth activists, but youth organizations should be more involved in the process of ensuring net zero transition. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. So we have a few minutes. So we would have now an interactive session. So we would take at least 3 questions. So the man with the jacket on the first row.
I am Alamgir Hossain, Research Director, Bangladesh Heritage Foundation. If there are challenges because of environmental change, it is mostly because of developed countries. Because of their industrialization process, they produced huge number of carbon, and now they are pressurizing developing countries like us or underdeveloped countries to reduce the level of carbon emission. Why should the developing countries like us or underdeveloped countries like us should take this burden? Shouldn't the developed countries take this burden, or shouldn't the developed countries give the compensation to the developing countries or underdeveloped countries because of this environmental change? Thank you.
Thank you. Next. So we would like to have some question from female participants, because as I said, this is really disproportionately male-dominated panel.
Thank you very much, sir. I'm Dr. Zahid Khan from Bangabandhu Sheikh Mujibur Rahman Aviation and Aerospace University. Very inspiring and also succinct talks. But I was just wondering, since the preamble of this plenary session also talks about how can we leverage the technologies, emerging technology to achieve net zero carbon emission. And one of the things which didn't come in the discussion is probably the prospect of geoengineering. And when I'm talking about geoengineering, I'm talking about the solar radiation reduction technology. There were studies on that, practices on that, and a UN panel was presented with the evidences. There were also carbon capture methodologies which can sort of reduce, keep the temperature at certain constant level. So do we think, does any, and I'm very encouraged to see one of the technical engineers and an architect in the panel, Mojammel Babu sir and Habib sir. So what do you think that is there a need for the South Asian countries to come together to sort of catch up with the geoengineering platform before it's too late when application and governance of this kind of technology is done by the global north as opposed to global south? Thank you.
Anyone? Please. That's good.
Hello everyone, it's good evening. I'm Sylvie, founder and president of Artpedia Global, a non-profit youth-led organization. So my question is that since solar power and fossil fuels and electricity and all these things we have heard, so my question is, considering Bangladesh, that is it possible to accommodate solar power or solar energy everywhere in every sector, like household or house, offices, institutes? Because we have seen that new power plant projects, there's this rooftop power plant project. So instead of investing such huge amount in such a big project, don't you think that government should invest more in solar energy or solar power plant? Not only Bangladesh, including all South Asian countries.
Okay. Two questions, three questions, and I, as a non-scientist sitting in the panel, can't really respond to that. And I'm sure there are two science graduates here. They would be better equipped to answer those questions. But obviously, other panelists can supplement the questions that has been asked. So, Mr. Mozammel Babu.
Let me tell you, this is a huge opportunity. You know, the 60% carbon emission in this region is due to our fossil fuel. If you consider cars and industries using fossil fuel, so that 60% is only for electricity production. If you consider industries and cars, automobiles, it is 80%. Now this is a huge opportunity to go back to natural sources. Like I give a small calculation. Bangladesh needs 120,000 megawatt hour in 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. So in this 120,000 megawatt hour can be produced from 30,000 megawatt power solar panel. And how do you get it? Small example will be enough. So government has established 200,000 Ashrayan house for the homeless. We all know. Each of them 750 square feet roof area. Each of them, if the roof is cladded with solar panels, each of them can produce 10 kilowatt hour. So these rooftops only can produce 1500 megawatt. If you consider the schools, another 1500. College, another 1500. Trust me, this 30,000 megawatt we can produce from rooftops only. And government has established bi-directional grid net metering system. That means in your home, if you produce 10 kilowatt hour, you consume 20 kilowatt hour, there is a balance, there will be a plus minus billing. So you'll have to pay only for 10. This is the opportunity when solar power is cheaper than fossil fuel. Let's take the opportunity and create the movement. One more thing, this is the time when if you even throw away our established fossil fuel based power plant, this is even cheaper. Don't just throw away and go to
Thank you, Mr. Babu. Mr. Iqbal Habib. Very 40 seconds.
Yes, but first of all, the building materials, the climate, we have to adopt proper building materials. And our climate is such that at least 8 months we don't need air conditioning system. We forgot that the advantage of this country is to be pro-environmental structure and taking advantage of that. That is one. Number two is definitely turning everything from private or individualistic to collective, to public transportation system. This is the time we should turn our cities like Bogota. Now, the idea is the decision makers are all like me, riding private cars. We are not shifting ourselves from this to that. And last but not the least, we have to consider, yes, a little bit different with Mozammel Bhai, that of course we have very less amount of land, with only 13 to 14%, which we need to leave for our accommodations, for our industries and all others. And also the irradiation of the solar irradiation. We have lesser solar irradiation than even India. But of course, we have to be conservative in use. One example, I will finish my argument. I have done a building called Krishi Vidya Institute. Only thing I have done, separated the total water line. We take from Wasa one line and rest reuse the shower water and the other water to use in our WC. By doing that, 46% of the need of the fresh, very expensive water came down. You see, innovation, looking at our resources should be our main turning point. This is the time.
Thank you, Iqbal Bhai. So, Bhalna Goen, about this unequal world, and then...
Thank you so much. And yeah, I would not be surprised to hear that questions, because that mindset is still very much prominent in many countries. Bangladesh is in many countries, so as in many countries, like Vietnam, where I am from, we still have the mindset of being the victim. And therefore, we used to say that we are not the one who is responsible for that, and other developed countries need to pay. So in COP and in many other international forums, we are negotiating and we are fighting for what we call the climate justice. And that process is going on. But before we win that battle, we also have to save ourselves. Save ourselves by how? I just give you an example, and this is for you to decide. Bangladesh air pollution kills how many people? 15,000 people a year. How many hours that we are losing? 18 million hours per day. That is a lot of money. That costs a lot of money. So if we are able to have, we save ourselves first. And that is that as we continue to continue with the fight. Yeah.
No, we have already, our time is, do you want to say anything, 10 seconds?
Just a supplement. That in Bangladesh, the government has developed one company called Infrastructure Development Company Limited. It's a 100% state-owned company. I'm from the private sector, one of the directors on the board. What we are doing is actually, we are gradually going for solar power projects like all the industries, large industries. We are financing at a low interest rate for a long-term basis, that they are producing solar power. Panels are planted on the roofs, and they can even, if they produce more, they can sell to the government. We can buy back. So this way, we are going ahead. I think it's a very good success in Bangladesh. Globally, we have made some points like.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Fadil.
Just one more sentence. I think that next year India should consider a lot more voices from developing countries in order to accelerate the climate justice agenda in the global climate governance. Thank you.
Yes, we hope G20 summit in Delhi would really usher a new era. Having said that, the discussion is of serious nature, and we have certain solutions, but what we have not seen, that the politicians are not acting based on science, and that's the difference. And what we really need is to see that 1.5 degrees Celsius agenda is not in emergency room. And we need a relationship between human and nature, because as we have seen how zoonotic diseases can really reverse the progress that has been made in 30 years in terms of AIDS disease, in terms of poverty reduction, in terms of gains achieved in education, health, and many places. So there are multiple crises, overlapping crises. What we need, statesmanship, not a brinkmanship, and that's the way forward. But we are quite hopeful, particularly given the youth's commitment to the issue and the way they are acting, and it makes us quite hopeful. With that note, we end this plenary, but I'm sure our panelists had many things to say, and please feel free to interact with them during the tea break or dinner break. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. I would like to request our panel member to come forward for a group photo. We would like to move forward to our next session, our speed talk session. For the key to success in human life, I would like to invite Sufi Mizanur Rahman, Chairman PHP Family and Honorary Consul of Indonesia, to the podium. Sufi Mizanur Rahman.
A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. In the name of Lord God Almighty, most kind, merciful and compassionate. Most honorable participants, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Sing when joy fills thy mind, sing when sadness crowds thy heart, sing when thy life stream runs its fullest, sing when death brings its darkest gloom. Sing that song which never changes with the change of time or tide of life. Laugh and merry, joy and gains, loss and gains, trials and tribulations, fame, infamy, light and shadow. These are all set words for our life's eternal song. Two roads diverged in a wood, and I took that one less traveled by, and that has made all the differences in my life. Like many other times in history, mankind always faces a crossroad. A road towards disbelief, misunderstanding, falsehood, greediness, all human disqualifications. The other leads to total extinction. We pray, God bless all of us His divine knowledge and wisdom to choose the real path of life we can enjoy here and the world after. Darkness cannot remove darkness. Only light can do that. Hate cannot remove hate. Only love can do that. The most important, the most urgent, the most persistent question before all of us, what we are doing, what we are trying, what we are thinking for others. Aponare roye bibrot rohiti ashenai ko hoboni pore, সকলের তরে সকলে আমরা প্রত্যেকে আমরা পরের তরে। Rivers never drink their own water. Trees never eat their own fruits. Cows never drink their own milk. Woods are being burned to make others' food. There are two things in life. One is requirement, another is purpose. Food, shelter, clothing, transportation, medicine, these are all requirements of human's life for our existence on this planet. But these are not only the purpose of life. Now, what is the purpose of life? Purpose of life is not only a very moneyed man, a very rich man, having 2-3 houses in the city, 2, 4, 5 air-conditioned cars. Purpose of life is to be a good ordinary man with love, care and compassion. Purpose of life is to be useful man. Purpose of life is to be an honorable man. Purpose of life is to put some glimpses that even after your departure, people will miss you. It is better to be a man of honor than to be a man of success. Success without honor is like an unseasoned dish. It meets your hunger, but no taste in it. Ladies and gentlemen, we welcome you to our motherland, Bangladesh. Here, I like to mention some sentences from Swami Vivekananda, which he delivered 130 years ago in Chicago, America. Swami Vivekananda delivered a lecture 133 years before in Chicago, in America. I quote, "Practice virtue, persevere in virtue, become established in virtue, shine as an embodiment of the noblest virtue, and heroic adherence to goodness. Youth is meant for this grand process. This period of your time provides the suitable and favorable fields for the working out of this extremely important and indispensable process in life. This is the special significance, the great importance and supreme value of youth. It signifies the creation of a noble personality. It is Atma Vikas, it is Atma Nirman. Oh, fortunate young people, recognize this great duty, feel this wonderful privilege, take this adventure. God watches you graciously, even ready to help and guide you. I wish you to be great. The world put its faith upon you. All the strength and success you want is within you. Therefore, make your own future. Like from childhood, they are constantly chained by the thought of careers, forgetting some of the finer aspects that life has to offer. Swamiji repeatedly reiterated to the young people, please try to understand the correct implication of the term successful life. When you talk of success with reference to life, it does not merely mean succeeding in everything that you undertake or do. It does not merely mean succeeding in fulfilling all wants or getting whatever you desire. It does not mean acquiring a name or attaining a position or imitating fashionable ways of life. The essence of true success is what you make yourself. It is the conduct of life that you develop. It is the character that you cultivate, and it is the type of person that you want to become. This is the central meaning of successful living. Your success is not measured in terms of what all you obtain, but in terms of what you become, how you live, and what action you do. Upon this point, reflect well and attain great happiness in human life. For any true development, we need two kinds of development. One, accumulation of wealth through trade, commerce, and industries. Other, to cherish the value system of the people. When both these happen together, there happens a great civilization, a great development, a sustainable development, a non-breakable development. APJ Abdul Kalam, ex-Indian president. It is better to be a man of values than to be a man of success, Albert Einstein. Success without honor is like an unseasoned dish. It meets your hunger, but no taste in it, Einstein. Everybody knows the secret of success, but everybody does not try to achieve the success. Lack of concentration and lack of determination cannot reach any good success. Everybody knows the secret of success, but everybody does not practice the secret of success. Warren Buffett. Gautam Buddha, your problem is you think you have enough time. Gautam Buddha, never give up. Your day will come. You only fail when you stop trying. Because you are alive, everything is possible. There is nothing again in this world. There is nothing again in this world. Because I know that time is always time and place is always an only place. And what is actual only for one place and one time. Therefore, I rejoice that thing every time in my life. Now, I tell a success story of Beethoven, one of the greatest musicians of the world ever produced. It had been a great performance by the great maestro Beethoven. The listeners had been enthralled by the magic and virtuosity of his music. When the concert was over, Beethoven was surrounded by his friends, admirers and well-wishers, who were eager to express their gratitude, appreciation. Good wishes and salutations were heaped on the gifted composer. Oh, I am envy at the gift of genius that God has bestowed upon you, exclaimed a rich woman in the conference. Now, if only I had been blessed with such a genius. Genius is not enough, my dear madam, interposed Beethoven. It requires practicing on the piano minimum 8 hours a day, non-stop 40 years. Genius is equal to 1% inspiration and 99% perspiration. Key to success: extensive training, limitless perseverance, indomitable spirit, and above all, uncompromising hard work, and hard work. The flame of life cannot be borrowed from others. It must be kindled from the temple of one's own self. शिरिया मुबारक ने जिनको साथ पर जाना है, लेकिन जो आसमां के आरजू रखते उनको रास्ता तो खुद बनाना पड़ता है. Men often become what they believe themselves to be. When I believe I cannot do something, it makes me incapable of doing that. But with courage and determination, when I believe I can, it makes me capable of doing that, though I did not possess the quality in the beginning. Allama Iqbal bolchen, the highest art in human life is to awaken the dormant will force lying inside within and to nurse it to face the trials of life manful with courage and determination to reach the ultimate destination. আমি জীবনে বড় পথ একটা সিক্রেট ট্যাবলেট I like to share you. No one ever attains very eminent success by simply doing what is required of him. It is the amount and excellence, what is over and above the required, determines the greatness of ultimate distinction. Charles Kendall Adams. একজন মানুষ জীবনে কত বড় হবে সেটা নির্ভর করবে তিনি প্রয়োজনে অতিরিক্ত কতটুকু কাজ করলেন. যারা সাধারণ মানুষ তারা কাজ করে 9টা থেকে 5টা, যারা অসাধারণ মানুষ তারা কাজ করে 5টা থেকে 9টা, আর যারা মহাসাধারণ তারা ঘুমায় না. আলবা এডিসন 1000 আবিষ্কার করেছেন, যেদিন শুইছে সেদিন মারা গেছে. আমি আমার জীবন 100 টাকাতে শুরু করছি. হাবিব স্যার I started my career with 100 taka monthly salary. Today's contest is 80 cents. Alhamdulillah, Allah is so kind. Many people ask me this question. What is the secret behind? আমাকে অনেকে বলে আমাদের টাকা নাই, পয়সা নাই, বাড়ি ঘর নাই, জমি নাই, ক্যাপিটাল নাই, টুলস নাই, অফিস নাই. How we can change our life? Yes, we can change our life. Martin Luther King Jr., one of the youngest Nobel laureate before Malala. একটু পানি খাওয়াইবা? এত বড় মানুষদের গলা শুকায় গেছে গা. বৃত্তি তো বহুত জ্বালা, কিন্তু টাইম দিছে 10 মিনিট বিয়ে কাকু। আমাকে অনেকে প্রশ্ন করে, হোয়াট ইজ আওয়ার ফেট, হাউ উই ক্যান চেঞ্জ আওয়ার লাইফ? মার্টিন লুথার কিং জুনিয়র, if a man is called to be a street sweeper, he should sweep the street, even as Michelangelo painted, Beethoven composed music, or Shakespeare wrote poetry. He should sweep the street so well that any guest from heaven or earth will pause to say, here lived a great street sweeper who did his job with excellence. The key to success, work hard, work hard, work hard. Lastly, APJ Abdul Kalam, President ex Bharat, India. When our nail grows, we cut the nail, not the finger. When our nail grows, we cut the nail, not the fingers. When our relationship deteriorates, we need to cut our ego, not the relationship. Now, Ukraine and Russia, what is fighting? William Blake, a small poetry. I was angry with my friend. I told my rod didn't. আমি আমার বন্ধুর সাথে রাগ করলাম, আমি বন্ধুর সাথে এক টেবিলে বসলাম, আমার রাগের কারণগুলি তাকে বললাম, তার কথা আমি শুনলাম, আমাদের সমস্ত রাগ প্রশমিত হয়ে গেল, আমাদের বন্ধুত্বের বন্ধন আরো দৃঢ় হয়ে গেল। I was angry with my foe. আমি আমার শত্রুর সাথে রাগ করলাম, I told it not. আমি তার সাথে বসলাম না, আলাপ করলাম না, কথা বললাম না, আমার রথ জিদ্র, একটা যুদ্ধ বেঁধে গেল। এই বর্তমান সময়ে আমি আপনাদের কাছে একটা নিবেদন রাখি, সকলের কাছে, এই পৃথিবীতে কোনো সমস্যা নাই। মাদার টেরেসা বলছেন, ইফ ইউ হ্যাভ নাথিং টু গিভ, গিভ ইউ নাথিংনেস, এ স্মাইল ক্যান চেঞ্জ দ্য ওয়ার্ল্ড, স্মাইল comes from heart, smile comes from knowledge, smile comes from fellow feeling. If we can give a smile, we can change the world. God bless all of us with His divine peace, happiness, and prosperity. PSP. Amen. Thank you. Assalamu alaikum.
Thank you so much, sir. Next, we have plenary session, and the topic is Soliloquy of the Sea, Tough Challenges in Rough Waters. And for that session, we have with us Dr. Mohammad Amirul Karim, retired Lieutenant General, Bangladesh Army, Lieutenant General Arun Kumar Sahni, retired former General Officer Commanding in Chief, Indian Army, Brigadier General retired Dr. M. Shakhaut Hussain, former Election Commissioner and Advisor, Center for Governance Studies, Bangladesh, Dr. Satoru Nagao, Non-Resident Fellow, Hudson Institute, USA, Air Commodore Ishfaq Ilahi Chowdhury, retired Security Specialist, Bangladesh. And the session will be moderated by Dr. Saira Khan, International Relations and International Security Expert, Canada. Thank you.
Sorry.
We're missing one, right? Nay? We're just waiting for one panelist. Assalamu alaikum. Good evening and hello, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Saira Khan. I have some eminent scholars and people from the armed forces here as panelists. And this is a panel that really interests me a lot, and I'm going to talk about the panel a little bit before I open up the floor, in other words, ask questions to the panelists. But even before that, I'm going to make a request, which I've been meaning to do for the past 1.5 days, which I couldn't do because I was not standing in front of the podium. Please, would you be kind enough to turn off your cell phones? It is extremely disrespectful to the panelists. I, for one, don't hear much when I'm sitting as an audience, and I'm terribly jet-lagged. I'm defocused often. Forgive me for that as well. Please do not talk, and if you do need to talk, if you can step outside, would be really kind of you and respectful to the panelists. So, if you have read the description of the panel, you've noticed that there are several questions there. And the questions that I'll pose to the panelists will be actually coming from, of course, the description. I'll actually break them down into different questions. And this may sound like an academic talking about methodology. It's going to be a bit of that, but it's going to be easier for you to follow and easier for my panelists to actually understand the questions and be able to respond to the questions. So if you have noticed, there is a fact there, which is that Russia has waged a war on Ukraine. There are two assumptions there, that China will most likely follow in the footsteps of Russia in invading Taiwan, which is debatable. Third is another assumption that this will probably, again, in all likelihood, lead to a Cold War, which is Cold War 2.0, or in the making, Cold War in the making, or this will be factored into that calculation. This may not directly trigger a Cold War, but this will be factored into that calculation, into the framework of a new Cold War between the US and China. So there is a fact, there are two assumptions, there is a prediction, there is a fine line between assumptions and predictions. So there is a prediction, which is that with this attack on Taiwan will have a regional impact for sure, which is South Asia, in the extra-regional sphere for sure, which is Southeast Asia or the Indo-Pacific, and how do you deal with it? So there is a question there, are we ready to deal with it? A fact that Russia has invaded Ukraine, by seeing that, China is likely to invade Taiwan, which is an assumption, and then if China invades Taiwan, then there's going to be a conflict, which is already there between the US and China, and this conflict, the rivalry, will protract further, leading to a new Cold War, and with that, there will be fallouts in this part of the world, which is South Asia, Southeast Asia, and the Indo-Pacific. And that means this will also have an impact on the South China Sea, how to divide, how to resolve the problems of freedom of navigation, and so on and so forth. And there is a question there. After the prediction, there's a question, are we ready to deal with it? And there is a policy recommendation. Can we not? It's almost like, asking the audience or the panelists, if you pose a question to the panelists, it's for you to answer that, or the panelists, if they are answering that question. Can we not think about that? This last thing really interests me because I'm working on that, which is, can we not think about cooperation under conflicts? Meaning, if the US and China have a new Cold War, and there are problems, of course, pertaining to the South China Sea in terms of freedom of navigation and resources, how do you manage who controls what, which part, and so on and so forth, and already China is disregarding, according to the US, many of those rules, the laws of the sea, and can we not have some degree of diplomacy there? Can we not have some kind of compromise there? And so on and so forth. So these are the questions that I will actually ask my panelists. They come directly, I've actually extracted those from the panel description. If I may say a few things very briefly, because if I'm standing in front of a podium and there's a microphone, I can talk nonstop for 3-4 hours, which I'm not going to do today. But if I can just quickly talk about international relations and American foreign policy a little bit, because it's very interesting to talk about that. Just think about the evolution. If you think about today's focus on the Indo-Pacific, you need to go back to the end of the Cold War. So the Cold War ended. What was in the offing? This is the end of history. There won't be a war. There won't be a war. So the liberal world order has had its victory, and China at some point will actually have to live with it, accept it, come to an understanding that this is it. Wars won't undo it. Let's just face it. End of history, no wars. In just a few years' time, you've seen the tale of the two worlds, core and the periphery. So there is a big distinction between the main powers and the peripheral powers, and we are in the peripheries. Of course, you do understand that. In the core, there won't be wars. In the peripheral states, there will be wars. And make no mistake in remembering that those wars were triggered by the United States. So just to name a few, one maybe at this point, quickly, the US identifies rogue states and states of concern. So it's Iran, Iraq, North Korea. Two of them turn out to be nuclear weapon states, and one was destroyed, devastated, there was a war, and so on and so forth. We are fortunate that Saddam's no longer there, and we are indebted to the US on that, but at the end of the day, there was a war which was waged by the United States. Moving forward, quickly, once all those things somewhat were under the carpet, what did we see? Pivot to Asia. Of course, that started during the Obama period. After that, focus on Indo-Pacific. Just 1 week ago or 2 weeks ago, this month, what was it? Pivot towards greater emphasis on diplomacy. So what are these? These are American foreign policies. I tell my undergraduate students all the time, why I say undergraduate students is because this is the foundation period. If you need to tell them that international politics is not American foreign policy. International politics is about the systemic foreign policies and the subsystemic foreign policies, meaning the regional foreign policies and the global foreign policies. Together we make up the world. And in the past 1.5 days, we've talked a lot about how much population we have in this part of the world, how much resources we have, and so on and so forth. So it is important for us to understand that these are their national security policies. These are their national security strategies. These are not ours to think about. If there is a war between the US and China, or when I say war, I don't mean war. There could be a war. There could also be a Cold War, which we are talking about, Cold War 2.0. But at the end of the day, if there is a war of that nature, what do? You don't want to be engaged in that war. You want to stay away as a regional power from that war. So on that note, I'm going to actually give my panelists the chance to talk. One of the first questions is, what do you think? I think I'm going to ask Air Commodore Ishfaq Elahi Chaudhry to answer that question. I just said that I've extrapolated these questions from the description. So one of the first questions is, would China actually follow in the footsteps of Russia in invading Taiwan? How do you see the situation? Is it likely that China would do that? And why would it do that? Does it have a national security strategy based on that?
Madam, I'm sorry to say that you've already taken 10 minutes of our...
Okay.
How many minutes do
5.
I have? How many minutes do I have?
I'm not going to talk in between. 5.
5 minutes, right?
Yes.
Good. So your question is that this Russia-Ukraine war, is it going to prompt? Well, there was a lot of speculation in our media also. I have spoken, and especially when Nancy Pelosi was visiting, and there was huge Chinese military strength display and all, and there was a lot of questions that will they invade at a later stage. But let me tell you that Taiwan is first of all, China has got the message from Ukraine. Ukraine being a contiguous, with Russia, they have given a thorough beating to the Russian, offensive forces, and that should be a lesson for any powers attacking another country. And Taiwan has a serious advantage because there is 100 kilometers of sea. To launch an attack on Taiwan, they have to cross this 100 kilometers and they have to prepare themselves, and they have to also control the air and the sea between the Chinese mainland and all. So, and over all these years, Taiwan has devised a defensive system. They call it the porcupine policy. The porcupine can, even a lion will not be able to, approach them. So, because they have that defensive. So, if at all it had come to a military attack, the Chinese will not have a walkover. Not only they will not have a walkover, they will have a devastation, not only caused in their area, there will be, other implications. So at no stage I felt that there will be, Chinese attack on Taiwan. And I'm sure after this G20 talks and all that, things are much more, under control. And there will be, we are all the time talking about the one China and all, but nobody is asking what is the Taiwanese view. Taiwan, for the child who was born in 1949 is now 70 years plus. He has never been a Chinese. And the Taiwanese today would like to know them, let the world know that they are Taiwanese. Okay? So even if there is any negotiation in future, that best answer in my view is to have a referendum, because without the opinion of the people, we just can't allow Taiwan to join in. And of course, in the surrounding, if China wants to be a major power someday, they have to first build up the relationship all around her and see from Korea to Japan to Taiwan to Philippines to Vietnam. Where Vietnam is a communist country and wasn't their ally, but today they are not, just because of the Chinese policy of aggressive, inroads into South China. So they have to build up all these things. And also, maybe he will talk about it, their relationship with the borders with India. You see, that's what, because the colonial legacy, if they want to go back to the Ming dynasty's border, then there will be problem with everybody. So I think Chinese leadership understands it today, and I do not foresee any major conflict in that area. And in fact, the best way is to be a peaceful settlement, and the best way is the business. Because you see, even Taiwan, $400 billion export, out of that 160 billion goes to China. So they have the biggest partner. Why should they disturb that? They're the largest microprocessor, manufacturer in the world, and the customers are China. So it's a mutually developed. Yes, there's a lot of this is a rhetoric. Most of the rhetoric made for their own people, domestic consumption. Because Xi Jinping also has to consolidate his position. So as far as I'm concerned, there is no, immediate, possibility of another Cold War beginning in that area. Thank you.
Since you didn't use your time, can I ask a little bit of a follow-up question to you? To you, yes, just a quick question. So then if that's correct, then why did China start the military drilling?
The military maneuver?
Drilling, yes.
Yes, because you see, first of all, China doesn't want the, they think the American inroads there is they are in the backyard, okay? So they don't want that. And also, as I said, that much of it was actually meant for the domestic crowd in China, because the Chinese Communist Party, conference was coming up, and where for the first time Xi Jinping was looking for his third term, and in fact he has declared that he will be lifetime president. So he had his other contenders. So I think he wanted to consolidate his domestic position as well, and also send a signal to the neighbors that there will be consequences if you involve militarily. But I tell you that if there is a military conflict, the Chinese are going to suffer a lot, and all the achievements that they have made in the last 50 years, 70 years, they won't like to lose it. So I think the chance of war is very less.
Okay, thank you. Brigadier General Sakawat Hussain, if I may ask you to respond to the question on the Cold War between the US and China. Where do you see it going? Is there a Cold War? Is it in the making? Will it happen in the future? Will Taiwan be part of it? Or will that trigger, or like he said, that probably there won't be a war over Taiwan. If that doesn't happen, can we still think that there's going to be a Cold War? And how do you define a Cold War? Will it be comparable to the Cold War that we've had in the Cold War years?
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, CGS, for involving me here, which I really don't know what I'm doing here. I never knew anywhere, wherever I was, what was I doing there. To start with, that's how I start. I'm yet not very clear that what we are looking for. As a Bangladeshi or as a South Asian, my thoughts are different. Having read few of the books, maybe, particularly when I read Brzezinski and Henry Kissinger, who says that United States must dominate, it must not give up its position to anybody for that matter. And if I quote Mr. Swami, in his book he writes that whenever there is a new anti-culture or not a similar culture country comes up as a superpower, there is uproar in the whole of geopolitics. And he mentions that when Britain demised as superpower, the Americans came up, there was this similar culture and there was no hue and cry. But when Russian came up, there was a hue and cry. Now Russian has demised, the Chinese are trying to come up, so there is a hue and cry. To answer very straight to you, I see no reason at this stage why China would attack Taiwan, knowing fully well that China is not yet militarily equipped to equate with United States. May what come, United States is still the most powerful country in the world, and they have capacity to fight three-front war. At present, they are deployed in two fronts. One is in Europe, and the other one is in Southeast Asia. And, well, the policies of Mr. Biden is very simple. He is reviving what America was in 19th century or the 20th century. Therefore, I don't see that we have to be much concerned about the Chinese military overture in the Taiwan. Well, one can say that the tension grows. If the tension grows, the tension is accentuated by Americans' policy, their national policy, not the Chinese national policy. Of course, China has its ambition, but that ambition is not yet militarily exposed anywhere. Having said that, how we are concerned, Bangladeshi, let's talk about that. I am concerned with what is happening around Bay of Bengal. I am concerned when we talk about the Taiwan and the Chinese overture. I am concerned how Bay of Bengal is becoming polarized. It is the most militarized, if not ocean bay, I would say, in the whole of the world. Imagine 3 neighboring countries are nuclearized: India, Pakistan, and China. And we Bangladeshis are very much within the arc. And not only that, from the sea point of view, when we talk of Quad, we talk of the American policy towards Southeast Asia. We have to remember that we don't have much exit. Our only exit through Bay of Bengal, which can be blocked any time, with a conflict, small little conflict between India and China. China, who is now having a footstep in Myanmar. And our problem, the national problem that we have, is what is going to happen in Rakhine State from whatever it is, and how we are facing 1.2 million Rohingya refugees. Nobody has come near to solve that problem. Neither the Americans, nor the Indians, nor the Chinese. We don't know what to do with it. And that is our big problem that I feel, which is almost going to engulf the Southeast Asia and East Asia as well. Therefore, what happens in China is not much important to me than what is happening in Bay of Bengal. And it's very much linked to its South China Sea. We are seeing a contest between the Indian power and the Chinese power, and we are rolled in between. And that is what is more worried when we talk about the Quad and when we talk about the IPS. But finally I would say I don't see the Chinese are threatening. They are threatening because they always remind that one China policy, which almost every country has agreed. But what would be the policy, how this one China is going to be achieved, whether it is through force or whether it is through negotiation? That is what is the bone of contention. But what I see today, if the Russia has attacked Ukraine, you have to see the geopolitics of the whole part of it, whether it is the heartland of Europe, which is now Russia is trying to take it, and the West is trying to defend, because this is the heartland. And if it goes to Russia, then there's a big problem in Europe. Remember that the First World War was fought, that was a European war. Second World War, of course, involved the others. We don't want to see another Third World War by just saying that Russia is fighting a war in Ukraine, and the China is going to evaluate the same. I do not agree to that, and my small little reading says China is not yet capable of just taking Taiwan by force. And it is nothing but, I see, birth of a superpower which is not being accepted by the established superpower and the middle power in this region. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you. So the next question, once again, is about the prediction, which I would request Lieutenant General M. Aminul Karim to answer. So this is about the ramifications. I mean, I know both of these speakers have said there's not going to be an attack on Taiwan, and then we don't see a new Cold War happening right now. There's no imminent danger. But then, had it been, should a situation of this nature occur, what would happen? If this happened, let's say there was the Taiwan incident that we are talking about, this panel was expecting at some point, before the Bali summit, let's say, you know, the rhetoric was there, Nancy Pelosi visited, and then there was the drilling, and there was all sorts of rhetorics about aggressive moves and so on and so forth. The idea was that there would be a war, right, over Taiwan. And if, assuming that we didn't have these panelists and this didn't happen, this kind of perspectives were not there in the offing, what would be the ramifications of such an attack on the South Asian region, the Indo-Pacific, or the South China Sea?
Thank you, Professor Saira Khan.
Welcome.
Very good question. let us paint a picture. And you have rightly pointed out, Taiwan is the linchpin, actually. It is the basis of all the conflict. Why I'm saying so? Because in Second World War, Japan had an airfield over here, and they fought their war in this part of the world from Taiwan. Taiwan controls East China Sea, Taiwan controls South China Sea. And what happened? There's an airfield between Okinawa of Japan and Taiwan. So American Air Force is based there, Japanese Air Force is based there, and Taiwan is the common strategic objectives of both Japan and America. And if America is going for attack on, if China is going for attack on Taiwan, America will come in, definitely. And Japan will also come in, definitely. Yeah, the point, my seniors from the military, I think this panel is highly militarized.
That's what I can feel. That's why I said armed forces. I shouldn't have said. I think we have a research fellow from
so,
where are you from?
So what I'm trying to say, if you are in control of Taiwan, then you can launch your operation in South China Sea in a better way. Because that will be the hub, the logistic hub, the military hub. Then, you know, the China can divert its resources from Fujian province to Taiwan, and then control East China Sea and South China Sea, and also Malacca Strait. So these are linked up. So China will not give up the vision of attacking Taiwan in the long run. No, that I'll never say that. At this point, in the next 5-10 years, they will not. But my projection, this was my PhD thesis actually, I projected that they'll do it in 2050. And China will overtake the American economy by 2030. I did this thesis in 2007, and my projection has come true. China is already number one in real economic terms. And from there, they will come to South China Sea. South China Sea has a problem of, you know, the 9-dashed line China is claiming, which is not correct. As per the UNCLOS, it is not correct. As per, they have signed a DOC with ASEAN, which is again not mandatory. Now ASEAN is trying to sign COC with China. That may be binding, but this is not coming up so soon. Now South China Sea, you see, China and America had long, strings of diplomatic parleys and activities, starting from 1971. Even before that, in 50s and 60s, they had about 250 ambassadorial level talks. And in 1971, Prime Minister Zhou Enlai sent a message to President Nixon through President Yahya Khan. There the 1970 war came in, and Kissinger went to China, and they said that you have to accept that China is one. America in principle has accepted that, but there is ambiguities. They have the communique of 1972, they have the communique of 1979, they have the communique of 1982, and then they have, they have promulgated the Taiwan Relations Act, and President Clinton promised to the Chinese 3 no's that we'll never say 2 Chinas, we'll never say one Taiwan, we'll always say one China. In principle agreed. China has about 2,000 missiles earmarked for Taiwan. China can mobilize a division in the amphibious landing, crossing once, as Spaghetti has said, 100-mile, Taiwan state line. They can move an entire division in one go. They can fire 1,000 missiles in one go. They can fire cruise missiles, they can fire ballistic missiles, and they have got 5th generation aircraft earmarked dedicated for Taiwan. But the point is, China at this point in time is following carrot and stick policy. They are first going for economic integration. It is not doing that good, but they're still trying that. But China is also following the stick policy. They are showing the deterrence, but if in case Taiwan declares independence, unilateral independence, then China is going to strike back, no doubt about that. They will see that America is a little far away, and they will launch their amphibious operation. Before that, there will be heavy artillery bombardment, there will be heavy missile bombardment, there will be cruise missile bombardments, and so forth. But that's a distant past, 1940s or 50s. So they are waiting for that. But economic integration is continuing between China and something like that, yeah. So that will be my visualization of the situation.
Thank
Yeah.
you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. The next question is for Lieutenant General Arun Kumar Sahni. This is, you've been kind enough to say, well, I can answer anything, so that really helped me, because this is an open-ended question. Are we really prepared to face a new Cold War between the US and China? Had it been the US and somebody else, would have been different, but we are talking about China, which has a territorial conflict with India, which is a protracted conflict. You've fought wars, and I'm assuming that you've been involved in that war, and if that's the case, you are the right person to talk about it. That what kind of preparation do we need, did we need, and should we be planning at this point? Are we prepared to face a war between the US and China? Once again, when I say war, I really don't refer to a hot war, a cold war that involves crisis and warlike situations. It can be rhetorics. It can be, in other words, there would be, like he said, there would be fallouts, there would be ramifications in this part of the world in terms of the economy, in terms of taking sides, in terms of focusing on balance of power, bandwagoning, focusing on the non-aligned stance, and so on and so forth. We don't want to be part of any of these, big powers. And whether or not, once again, it probably brings us back to that primary question: Cold War, is it the same kind of Cold War? So I think this is very important.
Firstly, thank you, Dr. Saira, for the question. But before that, let me thank CGS for having invited me here, Zulur for having got us here after a lot of effort over the last 2 years, where there's been a lot of back-chatting to try and get us all here. But thank you very much, and thank you to his team who's made us stay extremely comfortable. Outstanding question for the reason, as you said, I think your premise was that this is an assumption. And I think you're absolutely right. But before I go on to address the issue of the Cold War, the impact, and will there be a Cold War in the Cold War 2.0? Will it be something similar to what is there? Before I answer that, let me just look at two issues. What are the two issues that have come out of the Russia-Ukraine war? One of the first issue that has come out is that there is a fast, rapid, and a co-jointed and an integrated response to Russia, whether it's on economic support, whether a nation like Ukraine has been able to stand up because of the outside capacities that came in. Technology, firepower has helped, but human resilience has really taken a toll. And one of the issues that has really impacted Russia is this attritional war has had casualties, and that has affected the image of Russia as a nation state. So that's one lesson that China will have to take away from that. That any war that happens in the capture of Taiwan, which is attritional in nature, it will hit his image because cost of human value demeans the status and the stature of the nation when it goes ahead. So that brings me to the next issue that I would like to highlight, that if you look at Taiwan, what way will it be? Will it be an actual physical attack? As you're aware that today there is the basic population profile is at least about 90% is Han Chinese that actually inhabit the island. Today there is within the armed forces, the few years back that I did have an interaction about 3-4 years back with them, there is a large strong feeling of oneness with the mainland. So tomorrow if there is some kind of a I would say a hot war attack in an attritional manner, but there is something which is done and instigated within the nation that it capitulates and decides to join up irrespective of the resistance within the country, then the situation is going to be totally different. So I think the issue that I would like to take back, China will see there are some good lessons, but the attritional trade-off that would impact its image will be a deterrent for it to go. That is the first issue that I would, but going aside that there would be, is there a probability? Yes, as of now there isn't a probability. But if I look at how Russia-Ukraine war emanated, how did it happen? There has been a great amount of, Russia had been talking about its security requirements, the security matrix not being addressed, whereas the nations with NATO expansion continued to sort of trigger this, incite him to a point of rebellion. He carried out exercise Zapad 1, Zapad 2 about 2 years, 3 years before to give the indication that please don't
crossed the Rubicon as far as I am concerned. But who created this Rubicon to take it to the next level? That was America. I mean, the rhetoric was created that Russia is going to go to war, it's going to take over Ukraine. There has been a great amount of resolution and resolute actions that have been initiated that will capitulate. So this information war that built up created a hype to see that this war happened. When it happened today, I think the best winner of the whole game today is USA as far as this is concerned. Their economy is thriving, gas and oil trade has gone up, energy trade has gone out. Half the world of European world is now remilitarizing, so all the defense industries are thriving. Their shares have gone up by 30% in the last 5 years, in the last 5 months. So there is a great advantage. So I'm extremely worried that with the visit of Pelosi, with other kind of visits that are happening here, you're creating a hype about this extended deterrence where you're talking about giving this extended deterrence to Taiwan. You are actually creating a situation which is instigating or actually fueling the fire that exists out there. So it could erupt. What is the second problem that's happening in China? There is an economic slowdown. There is an internal kind of catharsis as far as the economy is going. If that goes bad to worse, situations don't improve in the other areas with India and the other areas with Hong Kong, things back up, there might just be no other option but for him to go to war. So what I'm trying to say is, though today it doesn't look apparent, but the slide from this a situation of it's not going to happen at all, the slide is extremely sudden as it happened in Russia. Everybody kept predicting and everybody, all of us wagered bets that it's not going to go to war. I also served in Russia, so as a military diplomat, so I would go by the fact, but I think we were all proven wrong because the issues and the atmosphere that was created led to this confrontation. So that could be a cause of actually seeing a China-Taiwan thing happening in the near term, which one of the European speakers yesterday, Hans, had talked about, maybe 24, 27. It could happen because the conditions exist. How they will pan out is what the issue is. Now the issue is that if it happens, what do you do? Can diplomacy and deterrence, diplomacy play a role? I don't think so in isolation. So what is the answer? The answer is deterrence has to be relooked at in this intervening period to ensure that the leverages that China will have when a war happens like this, undoubtedly there will be a disruption of trade and commerce. There will be a political polarization that will happen. You will have to choose sides. You might have an arrangement of a non-aligned movement or a status emanating in a different form. Why I'm saying a different form? That today China and the US, even when they're talking, you're not talking about a total cut between the two sides. The old Cold War alliances were total blocks which created and had their own resource banks, their supply chain, their management. Today they are totally intertwined. And if you're intertwined, as I said, Indian trade has grown to 125 billion. It was bought out. It's grown since the time of 2020 concentration. Today it's 700 billion kind of trade between the US and China, irrespective of the last 3 years of chaos that is going on. So what you're really looking at, a polycentric world order, that's what you're talking about. So what will get initiated in this whole process is that this transition that is coming out may get faster and speedier, where certain amount of the the weaker nations, the smaller nations, the middle-income nations may either have to adopt sides to be able to survive. So you would see certain amount of polarization. That's the political fallout. What will happen because of this? Exactly what's happening in Europe today. The security situation will get worse. Why? Because there will be militarization of all these small powers to try and make certain amount of military capability. So there will be a arms purchase cascading impact in the whole area. When you have everybody armed, then smaller issues of tolerance end up in being a violent fight. So if I'm at 20 and I meet somebody in a brawl outside in a bar, I might actually go into a brawl. When I become 60, I think twice about wanting to take panga with somebody. So the same story is going to happen here. When I have weapons and I think I'm strong enough, and you have a very, very, as you say, very autocratic democracies emerging today in the world, you never know what direction that he decides to go. So the initiation and the security situation of this whole area is going to disrupt. If today 60 to 80% of trade transits of different categories, commodities, energy, through the South China Sea, well, I'm sorry, you're going to see a disruption of this. The minute that disruption happens, what has happened is the geoeconomics are going to start playing. Singapore, which is a port, which actually, as it says, the kind of trade that transits through Singapore is 3 times the GDP of that Singapore, which is extremely high. So today when you look at a country like that, you will have to start looking at alternates. Can Singapore take the job of being the residual? So in that, I think I look at opportunities. Opportunities for the Andaman Nicobar, opportunities for the South Asian nations to have different deports which can assist you to take advantage of an opportunity, which is not the best thing to happen, but I think in nation states you look after your own interest. So that's an opportunity that would come out. But I think more importantly, what I would see is that this disruption is going to cause an upheaval, a transition of the new global order, whether it will be a polycentric, whether it will be otherwise, will all is a matter of conjecture. We can always see the contours of how it will. But I think the issue, the last issue that I'd like to flag is the issue of deterrence is something that you'll have to look at. And deterrence, I think, has been in what forms? I mean, as I see, one of the issues, I was attending one of these webinars the other day, I heard about minilaterals being talked about. Okay, the lattice work of minilaterals, which addresses the concerns of the smaller nations, will give synergy for them to continue. The resilience of supply chain reduces the dependency. It builds up a capacity to be able to fight. So that is how you should go. Today, when I see the advantage of pandemic, which all of us have done, is this Atmanirbharta, that is self-reliance, capacities to look at the critical issues within your area. I think, and I'll end by stating this, that this is all the more reason, this hypothetical situation, that South Asia has to get together so that we are resilient enough to be able to tackle the economic fallout of a situation like this. And I'll
Thank you very much for your detailed explanation. But actually, I have many questions for you, but I'll take it outside, not here, because there are people waiting to ask questions, and we still have a panelist who's going to answer the last question. The last question is also very open-ended. It's kind of normative, and also something, like I said in the beginning, interests me, because we've seen the US and Soviet Union fighting, you know, being Cold War rivals, extreme rivals, two superpowers, but at the end of the day, they were able to come down to the negotiating table and sign the Strategic Arms Limitation Talks 1, 2, Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty, also, although that was for the world, but you know, bilateral arms treaties were signed. We had the Intermediate Nuclear Forces Treaty and all sorts of things during the Cold War. So can we not, even if we had, this is a very, very good question that actually comes from the panel's description, that whether or not we can have cooperation, even if there is a conflict between the United States and China. Can we have cooperation? Can we have diplomacy? It's a question to, I'm going to, I hope I pronounce your name correctly. It's Dr. Satoru Nagao, right? He's a research fellow. Since he's not from the armed forces, I'm going to actually give his designation out. So he's a resident fellow, if I'm not incorrect, at the Hudson Institute, right?
Yes, my experience in the military is only 2 years as a first
I actually cannot hear you.
To compare with others, very short, that's true.
Do you want to come closer to the mic?
Yes. Yes, I was a military officer, that's true. And anyway, United States, huh? Yeah? Hello? Okay. Okay. Well, yesterday, I mentioned about the history of the United States, the last 246 years. The U.S. is a country to compete with other, and because the U.S. win the competition, they change the country from the just colony of the British Empire to the only one superpower in the world. If so, even if something temporary, the ceasefire has happened between U.S. and China, we cannot expect it will be the end of the Cold War. So that is why we should not rely on such kind of cooperation between US and China. So how to deter China will be the big matter. So what should we do? Indeed, when we checked China's activities, indeed there are 3 features, not only in the Taiwan, but also East China Sea, South China Sea, the South Pacific, Indian Ocean, and in the China border area. 3 features is, firstly, China do not respect international law. For example, in the East China Sea, before the 1970s, China did not claim the Senkaku Island of Japan, but they find the Senkaku Island is important to make pressure towards Taipei, or they find the natural resources under the sea. That's why they start to claim. This means that they change the claim. So lack of the respect for the international law is one of the feature. And secondly is when China found a power vacuum, they try to steal it. That is another pattern. And what happened in the South China Sea is in 1950s, when France withdrew from Indochina Peninsula, they take half of the Paracel Island. In 1970s, after the Vietnam War, US withdrew from Vietnam. China takes another half of the Paracel Island. In 1980s, Soviet troops reduced the number in Vietnam. China takes 6 feet of the Spratly Island. In 1990s, when US withdrew from Philippines, China takes the Mischief Reef. So when the military balance has changed, they find the power vacuum, they steal it. They are thief. So that is another feature. And third feature is attempt economic dominance or the other non-military methods. It's a very important method to expand their territory. So, for example, the Belt and Road Initiative, what happened in Sri Lanka? They invest to build the Hambantota port. After that, this investment is was trapped. People realize it because of the high interest rate. Sri Lanka cannot return the money, and the huge deposit they create, and they give to China the right of the control of the Hambantota port for 99 years. In Chinese, 99 years means that the same pronunciation with the forever. So this means that China takes it forever in Chinese. That is the meaning. So this is dangerous. So if so, what should I do? We should do the opposite of what China wants. So firstly, we must respecting the rule-based order based on the current international law. Secondly, maintaining the military balance. Why is Japan focusing on the offensive cavalry? Why is India is developing the new cruise missiles? Why even if Australia try to possess the Tomahawk missile, both the conventional submarine and the nuclear submarine under the AUKUS? Because if we have the offensive capability, China cannot forget the other side when they focus on other side. For example, if China want to attack Taiwan, in this case, China need to worry about the India-China border. If China want to attack India, in this case, China need to worry about the Pacific side, because all of these countries has offensive capability. And integrate military and non-military policy as an overall strategy is also the matter of, we should seek as a strategy. Because yes, China suggests a very good investment project, but indeed that is a trap. That's why the Quad prepares alternative infrastructure project. Or because of we rely on Chinese market, we cannot say we cannot criticize China even if China violates the international law. In this case, we need to create alternative market. Supply chain or economic security we call recently. Why we need? Because China uses this kind of the non-military method to expand their territory. If so, we need to focus on this area, non-military method. China is rich, that is a problem. China is rich because China is rich, they can increase the military expenditure. China is rich, they can do the Belt and Road Initiative. So we should reduce China's income. That is the answer. And so, in this case, what kind of implication, especially it's related to the Bangladesh, we need to think. When we find, when we enter this hotel, we can find one panel, and one panel of the Mujibur Rahman, the hero of the independence. He is a man of the strong spirit. If so, Bangladesh is a strong country. If so, when we face the China threat, when we face the US-China, the Cold War, in this case, when we rely on such kind of a strong spirit. Now Japan, US, India, Australia, from the Quad, many other countries join this move to maintain the rule-based order. If so, Bangladesh also show the spirit of Rahman to deter China's ambition. That is very important, and indeed, we expect Bangladesh will show very strong will in the world stage. That is why Japan, US, India, Australia, and Bangladesh is one group. Thank you very much.
Thank you. So I don't think we have much time, but I would still like to open up the floor for any question. Well, there are already some hands, so let's start with the gentleman there. Can you just identify yourself? I cannot see from here. Go ahead. It's all yours. The floor is yours.
Excellent military academics as well as policy analysts, and definitely we have benefited out of the operational side of it. We had little discussion about tactics as well as strategy. Anyway, having said that, I have a just small point. We are looking at Bay of Bengal. And this is good that there is a one step in terms of reduction in property rights stability in Bay of Bengal by having the UNCLOS decision on Bay of Bengal and delimitation. Secondly, what we see is obviously there are renewed discussion on deterrence, because Henry Kissinger, if I could remember, he has said in Economist article, where saying that we have to really rethink about deterrence. But having said that, while India has this cold start, so looking at that level, while some academics are questioning about the Nash equilibrium, so why, as if the answer to non-investment in Bay of Bengal, particularly in terms of harnessing its huge hydrocarbon resource, is it due to the fact that Bangladesh requires a kind of a deterrence that would ensure property rights stability and thereby smooth the risk, and so renewed investment would take place? So I would really like to hear your thoughts about that. Thank you.
Okay. So I'll probably take two more questions because we really have to end this, and I'm sorry. But let's just take the questions, and if someone can answer here, otherwise, we'll have to take it outside because this is an interesting panel. Yes. But you just have to pose the question. Please don't give a lecture.
Thank you very much, and I'll be brief. So, first of all, Bangladesh, as many other small states in this region, is located in a region with two major rising powers with global aspiration. As a reader of politics and international relations, I find the cognitive origin of the Chinese aspiration, global aspiration, can be found in the concept of Tangxia, all under the heaven, where the concept of tributary states fits into the narratives of the small states in South Asia. And in the context of India, there is also this concept of Akhand Bharat, first coined by Chanakya. Now, none of these concepts sits well with the small states in South Asia, because it sort of challenges their normative values and also their sovereignties if those cognitive beliefs gets materialized in their aspiration to become a regional power. So my question to particularly General Sinha sir, and also Dr. Nagao to 2 points. One is, does India, I would love to have a Chinese participants in this panel to have the Tangxia question answered, but would you sort of elaborate how does a concept of Akhand Bharat really exist? And to the academician, as you know, for small states, there is, in the international relations, there is a concept of balancing versus hedging. what should Bangladesh or small states like Bangladesh do in sort of when they're sandwiched between these two aspirational major powers? Should they follow balancing or hedging?
Thank you. I'll take just one more question. Yes. Yes, that's you. Please,
Thank
quick,
you for
short.
thank you for giving me the floor. I know the time's constraint. So I would like to tell that the one China policy is an universal consensus to the international community and the norms in the international relations. So I would like to know that also mention that the recent visit, the Chinese ambassador has said that the recent visit of the White House Speaker Nancy has said that gave a wrong signals in the separatisms of the Taiwan independence. And as we know that the Chinese government has said that Bangladesh will be abided by China. But India is with Europe and USA, and we know that India and Bangladesh has also a friendly relations. So what are your points or what are your views on the effects of the Cold War or the war of China and Taiwan in Bangladesh and as well as South Asian countries?
Thank you. Very good question, actually. Yes, if you want to respond. Yeah, in 1 minute.
Respond to Professor Titumir's.
Okay, one.
Yeah, I think if I have understood you correctly, Professor Titumir, you are saying that should we make investment in Bengal and create a deterrence?
I'm saying that should we
Yes, I agree totally. What you have said, proposed is, I'm totally with you. We have to have deterrence in the Bay of Bengal. Why? Because Bay of Bengal is linked to South China Sea through Malacca Strait. And these are called twins in two different oceans. Bay of Bengal is the twin in the Indian Ocean, and east twin is in the Pacific, is the South China Sea. And we have two slocks, sea lines of communications. One going to Southeast Asia, and the other is going to the Middle East. And for that, and the blue economy is in the Bay of Bengal, because Bangladesh has got no natural resources on the shore, but offshore we have oil and gas. So to protect that, we need to invest in the military forces, especially for the Navy and for the Air Force.
Thank you. So can someone respond to the second question?
May I come in, Titumir? Professor Titumir? You know very well that the future of Bangladesh lies on Bay of Bengal, not what the land we have. And Sparso gives us a hope that the lands which are coming up, which would be, if not equal, it will be half of Bangladesh, in spite of fact that we are threatened by climate change or whatever it is, rising sea or whatever it is. And the sort of examples I can give you towards my maternal grandfather's area, that is southmost area of Bangladesh. I'm talking about south of Bhola is Manpura. If you visit there, you will find that even Bay of Bengal dries up at one particular place, particular time. Of course, the Bay of Bengal is the future of Bangladesh. There's no doubt about it. We have not invested much. We really have not invested much. I don't know why. And the deterrent you are talking about, that is one big issue. How much is deterrent for Bangladesh? I can just tell you one thing, that if there is a conflict as a perception, geopolitics and strategy is based on perception. If there is a conflict between China, USA, of course, the India comes in. In that case, we will be just landlocked.
Thank you.
Just landlocked. Imagine a line, Indian line from Visakhapatnam to Nicobar Island, where they have a separate command altogether. So where do we go?
There were two questions for the two of you.
Where do we go? Therefore, we need deterrent to break through either or protect whatever we have in Bay of Bengal.
Thank you. Yes.
Yeah, thank you very much. I think just to give you an idea about Akhand Bharat, I think let me clear that the Prime Minister and all of us as Indians are extremely conscious of the sovereign boundaries of each nation that it is. We have cultural and civilizational linkages, but today all South Asian countries have an independent identity, and I think that's how it is respected, and we meet as equals. The size does not matter. So I think Akhand Bharat is for our internal dissonance. As you're aware of it, I mean, we've got enough problems within our country because between the developing parts of India, there is a certain amount of disparity. And if you see what the Prime Minister has talked about, inclusive growth, that inclusive growth is what he's talking about in an Akhand Bharat. That we want this Bharat which can be resilient, this India which we today shouldn't have the one which lives in urban cities and the one which lives in rural. The urban enjoys the benefits of development and the economy that is growing. We are now the 5th largest economy in the world and maybe become 5 trillion in another 3 to 5 years. So that economic advantage should go down to all. And this Akhand Bharat is that there should be no dissonance between different societal groups, ethnic groups, different regional areas. There should be an inclusive development, and I think that's what he looks at, the neighborhood first policy, that Sagar Mala, they're all linked to this fact that India can only grow and sort out its internal problems if the nations which surround us, who are independent entities, also grow in the same harmonized manner. And if you see, the issue of enclaves was sorted out after what, 70 years? Sorry, the time is over.
No, it's okay. There's just, I think he needs to respond, right?
Okay, thank you very much.
But can you do it in 1 minute? Really, I mean, they're just knocking.
Okay, so I received the 2 questions, I think. So about the one China policy, I need to say, we do not say the one China policy is our policy. We respect one China policy, it's China's policy. So that's why we should not mistake. One China policy is China's policy, and we respect it. But this is not our policy. We do not admit. And so secondly, about the second question, I need to say, what should Bangladesh do, especially the infrastructure project came from China? Yes, there is a possibility it is a trap. But at the same time, firstly, Bangladesh should check carefully. And at the same time, Bangladesh asked the Quad or share the information with the Quad, and is there something alternative project, or is this a trap, and to get some kind of information, or if there is alternative project, Bangladesh can get the chance to negotiate with both at the same time. Indeed, Bangladesh has already done. When China suggests Sonadia Port project, Japan suggests Matapari Port project as a counter project. Finally, after Bangladesh check carefully, Bangladesh accepts Matapari Port project. Both are located in Chittagong. So that's why Bangladesh has already done very clever, very good decision. That's why Bangladesh can survive. Continue to this great decision.
Thank you. Thank you. 30 seconds, maybe.
I just want to add to this that we are now in an excellent situation as far as India-China, Bangladesh relations. You see, both are our trading partners, major trading partners. China #1, India #2, and with China our export is not growing, but with India our export is growing, and both are also investors. And Bangladesh is sort of balancing between the Chinese investment, the Indian investment, the Japanese investment, the Korean investment. And in fact, everybody is eager to invest in Bangladesh. This is the best climate, and this is also declining. But our worries are between the Chinese and the Indian border. I don't care what happens in Ladakh, but like 62, if something happens here in your Arunachal, or more closely even Nathula, where even in 67 you had a conflict, which is just 100 kilometers from Bangladesh border. That's what worries me. And we only pray that it doesn't happen again.
Thank you very much. Thank you, audience, for coming, for giving us a patient hearing. And thank you, my panelists. Thank you very much. আমার হাতের উপর তো না
Oh, Japanese. Sotoro Naga. Yeah. Fantastic. You spoke very well. Very strong. You are more military than the military. But he was more military than the military. He said, yes. ওইদিকে সাউন্ডটা যাচ্ছে very good. I'm in the Air Force, brigadier, retired, now in the university.
Fighting scholar. Fighting scholar.
And I'm now 74 years old and I'm still working. কলমটা পাইছো? কলম দিছিলাম।
Our next session is Sounding Board, and the topic is the interplay of the Global North and Global South in geopolitics and development. And for that we have with us Dr. Sanjay K. Bhardwaj, Professor of South Asian Studies, School of International Studies, Jawaharlal Nehru University, India. Dr. Erin Watson, Managing Director, Baker & York, and Board of Director, Council on Australia and Latin America Relations at the Department of Foreign Affairs and Trade, Australia. And the moderator of the session is Dr. Asif Saleh, Executive Director, BRAC, Bangladesh. Thank you.
Okay, good evening. So we are actually going to stand in between dinner. So we're going to keep it tight and concise. So we have 30 minutes. You're good? 30 minutes for the panel. My name is Asif Saleh. I'm the Executive Director of BRAC. And we have a couple of fantastic panelists today. Dr. Sanjay K. Bhardwaj from India, Professor of South Asian Studies, School of International Studies, Jawaharlal Nehru University. We have Dr. Erin Watson, who's the Chair of the Advisory Board for National Center of Student Equity in Higher Education and Curtin University in Australia. And what we're going to talk about today is the interplay of the Global North and Global South in geopolitics in development. And as somebody who works in development as the Chief Executive of BRAC, this is something that we are very much aware of, particularly in the context of development. Just for context, the word Global South, Global North is familiar to many of us, but if not to some of you, Global South refers to particularly low-income countries from the developing world, as opposed to Global North, which is essentially predominantly from North America, Western European, more developed economy. You have heard quite a lot about this in the recent COP discussion, where developed countries first time actually agreed to set up loss and damage fund to compensate for the sort of damage in the climate, particularly for the climate vulnerable countries. So this tension is very much sort of there, present, and we heard about it in the last panel a little bit. Yeah. So we have 30 minutes, so we'll take 20 minutes for our panelists, and then we'll go to Q&A from the audience if there is any. So my first question is for Dr. Bhardwaj. So recently, as all of you know, that there has been, India's foreign minister recently in an interview said, when asked about the Ukraine-Russia war, he said, "I'm not sitting on the fence just because I don't agree with you. It means I'm sitting on my ground." So this interview got a lot of airtime in the social media and widely circulated, and perhaps was an example of Global South not really towing the line of Global North in global policy, in deciding its foreign policy and asserting itself more strongly in the global stage. So not just security, as I was mentioning, in development as well, there was a big debate around decolonization of development. And so my question to Professor Bhardwaj is that unpack this for us a little bit as an academic, and how do you see this tension unraveling?
Thank you, Chair. Before coming to the Indian position and what the Foreign Minister Jaishankar had talked about Indian foreign policy and Indian stand, that is not sitting on the fence, is on the ground. Definitely, it's very pragmatic approach, very important. But before going to India's approach in the present global order, let me put 2-3 very important aspects to understand the global South, and then where we as India stands in this global South. First thing, be very clear that in 2 very significant incidents, one is of course the pandemic, COVID-19, and the second is the Soviet or I would say Russian action in Ukraine. These are the 2 very critical, very significant incidents had happened and going on. Given a 2 very clear impression that in my understanding. One is that international institutions like the UN, WHO during the COVID-19 had been questioned. I would not say they failed to control the pandemic or they failed to control the Russian action in Ukraine, but is that they have been questioned that what is their role being an international institution. Second, and that gives an impression that the international system has become a self-help system. That the country has to fortify its border, country has to protect their people, country has to protect from the external aggression, and country has to protect their people from any kind of pandemic and all that. This is first submission of mine. The second thing is that I do find that the neo-liberal ideology had been overloaded by the neo-realist or neo-realism in the recent past. Keeping these developments into mind, you see where the world is moving ahead. The world is moving towards the military alliances. Now, we are not much focusing about the economic alliances in the last few years. We are talking about NATO's expansion. We are talking about Quad. We are talking about AUKUS. We are talking about that the Russians, they had come out, CSTO. Kind of organizations are dominating the discourse. And where the world is moving towards arms and nuclearizations. The countries have started emphasizing they are trying to become missile men. They are trying to become a nuclear country. They are trying to become and getting more and more arms and ammunition from different. I think that is the fundamental factors that you are indicating, that all the countries in the world are important, particularly a emerging power, that is India, emerging economic power, that is India, and to protect India from the external aggression, number one. You need definitely a constant support from different corners. We had 4 foundational agreements with the Americans. The 4 foundational, very core agreements, but we are also maintaining very close military engagements with the Russians. We are getting all kinds of arms and military supports. So, and we have, the first session we have talked a lot about the Chinese, and the Chinese aggression we have seen over the borders in Doklam or Pulwama and all these things that the Chinese aggressions the world has seen in South China Sea and other parts. So we are very conscious that India had been doing very conscious military diplomacy. We had developed strategic partnership with the 37 countries all over the world. Number 2, that we are also going very carefully about the military engagement, economic engagement and economic integration. For that, the energy security is another aspect that India is looking. Definitely any country in the world, we want to sustain our economic growth. We want to continue, there is a constant demand from 2 to 3% for the energy to sustain the economic growth, 6 to 7% in India. And we are looking that affordable, uninterrupted supply of energy resources from different corners. So we are trying to have the energy transitions through the technology within the countries, but we are also exploring the overseas avenues of getting energy resources. India had invested around $16 billion in energy sectors of Russia. And you know, we are hoping, we are looking forward to have more and more energy cooperations with Russia. So my point is there, while the things are going on, or the fights are going on between Russia or Ukraine, or I would say Russia and NATO, or I would say directly Russia and Americans, that India had adopted very, very carefully that an independent states. That has been demonstrated in other cases also. So India, what India believes in independent foreign policy. And in that independent foreign policy, India maintains strategic autonomy. And at the same time, India also believe in multi-aligned foreign policy. We are aligned with the Quad, but we are also a member of SCO. We are also a member of BRICS. And whatever the regional and international organizations that benefits to India's economic growth as well as for the security, we are aligned with them. So we are very, very, very careful. We are not, and that I would say, we are having very independent foreign policy. It may be, I would not term it, it's non-aligned foreign policy, but of course we are having very independent foreign policy. 2 things I would like to add about the global south, you know, and in the context of global south, where the world is going. In the international relations, 2 trends are currently evident further to understand the global south stance, because India's role is going to increase in near future. India has taken the presidency of G20. India has also become the president of SCO. And of course, in UN Security Council, India will be the president for the next month. India's role is very critical to have to lead the concerns of the global south, particularly in 2 areas. One is of course climate change, that has been negotiated in detail in 27th COP meeting, and you know that the discussions had gone one day. Had extended for one day to have climate justice, and you know the way the climate finance was to be allocated for that, and that had been decided finally that 500 millions would be converted into $1 trillion by 2030. That kind of negotiations, which are the countries, the global south, because they are looking the climate finance from the developed countries to bear it. And of course, the second is from the Doha round. It had come out with on the trade and commerce in the commerce sector, and there we are also aligned with Chinese in some cases about the trade negotiations with climate change issues and all that. So I do find that what international, the two trends are currently evident in the context of global order. First, the discipline no longer views as global, discipline no longer views as the global order as monolithic, but rather as a system of layered order operating at multiple levels and encompassing issues, areas that spans from political, security, economic, socio-cultural, environmental issues. The second point is that the traditional notion of global order, understood in terms of polarity and state centricity, are changing to accommodate shifts in the distribution of power and emergence of multiple actors and multiple areas. The multi-level, multi-factored and multi-causal transition necessitates a re-emerging of global order in present context. There are states in the globally. Some of states are system determining states. As Robert Keown has talked about, that system determining states, system influencing states. There are system affecting states. What we talk about the middle power today is in the context of Bangladesh and Thailand and Malaysia and all that. And of course that system in effectual states that are not, they are there, but they are not having that kind of system. These states are trying to graduate themselves. That system influential states are trying to become system affecting states, and system influential states are trying to become system determining states, and that creates a multipolarity that creates a lot of different layers. It's not remain monolithic. Politically it is unipolar.
Yeah, thank you.
Militarily it is bipolar, and economically it is multipolar. The world is emerging because of the states are asserting to become, trying to graduate themselves from one stage to other states, and that is challenging the present global order, particularly in the context of the emerging new scenarios.
Thank you. This is a very good segue to the next question, that moving from unipolar to multipolar, and it's not a monolithic world anymore. So from that context, in the development space, for example, we see a lot of this is around that the traditional notion of development used to be that from global north, certain prescription would come. This is how things would happen, and then this would be implemented in the global south. That is being questioned, that is being challenged by also a lot of organizations from the, this area. So my question to you, Dr. Watson, is that, Australia has recently come to some criticism about its immigration policy, its climate change policies. Is the global north ready for a reboot or restructuring of this multipolar world that we are talking about and the new realities, and how is it adjusting itself? Thank you.
Thank you. It's a really, really good question, and obviously I come from the global north, though I kind of live down there, but anyway. I want to bring this to life a little bit in the sense that give you a real example of where I think that these imbalances, and in a country like Australia, you touch on our immigration policies, which now I don't speak on behalf of the government at all, and I can't sit there and defend them because, it's so problematic, some of the things that, the way these things are structured. So I want to bring that to life for you. So at the moment, Australia is chasing India, right? We want a really high quality free trade agreement with India for strategic and economic purposes, obviously trying to diversify away from China, trying to, and we've been somewhat successful in some industries in doing that. But we've got really big ambitions, and I don't think that many people in Australia actually understand India that well, and understand that when it comes to sensitive industries, forget it. It's not going to happen. We need to diversify beyond India. but Australia can't quite get their heads around that yet. So we did see the trade agreement, the interim agreement ratified today, excluding all of those sensitive industries. So let's park that for a second. And I'll give you a real example of something that happened to a colleague of mine from Bombay who was flying into Australia to participate at a conference. So this is the country that we want to be, really close partners with, because, they're going to be a top 4 economy by the middle of the century, along with Indonesia, and you can apply this experience to Indonesia as well. So this person coming to Australia, they'd been invited by a university, it was funded by, I think, the American government, because that's what they do. And she put in all of her paperwork for her visa. She had the letters, she had the accommodation, she sent in her bank accounts, which is wild to me. Her bank accounts, sent in who her parents were, which again, although India does ask that for us as well, and it was rejected. And she was so upset. I've now revealed that it was a woman, but anyway, this person was really upset, and I think the gender dynamic's really important here as well. They did eventually get to Melbourne, and we actually got to have brunch together, which is where I heard this story, and it was really fantastic to see her. But now she'll have forever on her record that she's had a visa rejected. And the only way that she got to get her visa was, 1, pulling a few strings with some people that she knew in the department, but 2, that she was able to prove that she wasn't going to overstay her visa, that she was going to return home, that she had full intentions of leaving Australia at the end of her program. The flip side to all of this is that, and I've been working in and out of India for over 10 years, and once upon a time I used to have to get a visa in my passport, but these days I log on to a system, which is a little bit slow sometimes, but that's okay. I log on to a system and I do it electronically within 24 hours. They do ask who my husband is and they ask who my dad is. That's fine, I just write their details in. And within 48 hours or 24 hours usually, I have an e-visa, and then when I arrive in Delhi or wherever I arrive, I walk straight through the front door and no one asks me if I'm going to overstay my visa. And to be quite frank, sometimes I think I might. Not really, for anyone here listening. But I think that this kind of goes to, again, that power dynamic that continues to perpetuate, despite the fact that obviously in this increasingly multipolar world, and with these countries like Indonesia and India, that a country like Australia is really chasing economically and strategically, we just don't seem to be able to unpack those power dynamics, and we're not comfortable with letting go of that power that countries like Australia and others continue to have. So that very briefly answers that for you. I'm very mindful of time, but I think that kind of illuminates this north-south dynamic that I think will continue to persist. And I think it's if I may make one more comment, part of this is political in Australia. So, only 50 years ago Australia had White Australia policy. Australia now has 50% of the population born overseas or has one parent born overseas, and I think it's around 30% were born overseas. So now incredibly diverse, and India is our largest source of migrants. China is probably our second. Southeast Asia is very high as well, so it's an increasingly Asian country as well. The political parties don't look like that, but at least everyday life in Australia is much more Asian. But the point I'm trying to make is that our institutions are still very colonial. They are still very dominated by white Australia, and a lot of the way that politics plays out is that migrants are used, and the Global South is used in that process. So, many of you would have heard about Operation Sovereign Borders policy, where if you came to Australia on a boat, it was guaranteed you'd never be resettled in Australia. You would be settled in a third country, and then exploiting other Global South countries in the process. So really, we've got a really historical abomination, I can't string a sentence together, record of using this stuff in political campaigns, in using this to win votes, to be, we want to protect your jobs, you know, jobs for Australians, this kind of thing. Although, you know, after the pandemic, we're like, where do we get people from? Because we shut our borders for 2 years, you know. So I think there's some really hard truths here that a country like Australia and others in the global north need to face.
Thank you. No, it's very interesting that, thanks for that frank acknowledgement that also that it is also a multi-dimensional, and not everybody is ready to make this political adjustment. So maybe in 2 minutes or so, how should the global south, and kind of extrapolating from India a bit, compete in this new space to have a more equitable conversation? I mean, whether it's knowledge space or other space, how do you think we should elevate our game?
Thank you for asking this. Thank you for asking this question. In fact, you know, there is a debate between the exceptionalism and universalism. And the universalism basically had been dominated by the Western construct, the American political science or social sciences. They have been dominating and having a single vocabulary, theory, constructs, and, you know, understanding the world by themselves. This global south has created a different knowledge base, and that is the exceptionalism that is not accepted by the Western constructs. And they are trying to build they are trying to add the values in the global south by creating their own vocabulary. They are creating their own discourse on different issues of, as I said, about the climate change, about the trade, about the power, about the different concepts of that international relations and this. So global south, what they are, for example, I would say the global south is emphasizing that we should talk about responsibility while protecting instead of responsibility to protect. The responsibility to protect is basically a Western construct, and the global south is giving an alternative discourse is responsibility while protecting. Or you can say that the notion of emerging power instead of pivotal states, that should not be, the notion of emerging power should be used. Third, like we talk about dialogue between the civilizations, the Chinese civilizations, Indian civilizations, instead of talking the clash of civilizations. The clash of civilizations again is the Western construct. And you will see the talking about the economic aid, we should talk about the developmental assistance. That kind of discourse, vocabulary, theories, understanding of global south will definitely add to the knowledge society. Now the authors, the writers like in India, Kautilya has given its theory about Mandal theories, that the realist discourse much before Morgenthau and Machiavelli had not been recognized what they are understanding. Santu, and that you will see is his writing, the realism and all that. These global south's writing and understanding about different concepts of the world should be re-emphasized, re-imagined in a way so that, and there I think the global south, where I'm talking about the Asian countries, the Latin American countries and the African countries, they can create a dominant discourse to understand, to pursue their objectives, to have a dialogue with the global north. And while you will have that kind of vocabulary, understanding, knowledge, concepts and different constructs, then you will be in better position to have a better dialogue with the global north.
Absolutely. I mean, Jugaad innovation is one example that now we're calling frugal innovation that started from India. Now it's been a kind of a worldwide, it's known about this. So, I mean, maybe last question to you. I mean, there's a lot of changes happening in this world. Big tech taking over global conversations to climate change adaptation. And there will be dynamics that will be changing over the coming years and this decade. How do you see this relationship between North and South evolve in this coming years?
Yeah, I mean, I wish I could stare into a crystal ball and tell you, but I think what's really interesting is we're already seeing some of these challenges play out in a place like Australia. So from, I guess, with the technology and the digital economy, which are really big issues across all of the big multilaterals at the moment and the minilaterals, is that Australians, where we've had historically very high wages, very high minimum wage, and we've prospered and been very fortunate for that. But we're actually now playing in a global labour market. And that puts a lot of pressure on what's going on in Australia, because when I want to hire a graphic designer, I can jump on Fiverr. Well, actually now I use Canva, so Canva stuffed that for everyone. but I can hire someone in Argentina to be a PA for me who speaks wonderful English, university educated. Uber's a top 100 university, really highly ranked law school. And I can hire someone for about $800 a month. If I want to hire that person in Australia, that's going to cost me, I don't know, $7,000 a month or something. So I think with that globalisation of the labour market, that's a changing dynamic. And that's not a bad thing, because that can also lift up, right? Yeah. So I see that as a really positive thing. You can be giving jobs all over the place. So I think that this is where a country like Australia, where it's so used to having this incredibly privileged position, and I think that this doesn't even just go internationally. It's also domestically for us with our First Nations people, and facing up to some of those really hard truths where people don't finish school. Their life expectancies are 20 or 30 years less than if you are a white Australian. So we've got some really hard reckoning with what our place is in the world as a modern Australia, and how all of those power dynamics are going to change. And we see this in the security relationship. We see, countries like, look at what's going on in the Solomon Islands right now with Australia. It's, and our often very paternal approach to these things. We don't have a strong history of working in the Pacific. In the development sector, yes, and AusAid, yes, but not in a security context, not in a broader economic context. And these countries actually wield a lot of power in those negotiations, and the way that they can work. So that's a change in power balance, because now all of a sudden the Solomon Islands has a lot more ability to negotiate and make their own decisions. So that's and I think Australia really struggles with that. So interesting times ahead.
Interesting times ahead indeed. Unfortunately, we have just about 1 minute. So maybe just take one quick question. Well, there are two questions. Yeah? Okay, all right. So, and then please do. Just let me take the questions, and then we'll close the panel with the final answers. Please make it a quick question, yeah? Thank you.
Maintaining its independent foreign policy, and it has strategic autonomy. How do you justify that? Because you are buying your arms from Russia, or oil and fuel from Russia, and you have gone to Quad, and you have signed a lot of defense and nuclear pacts with Japan and United States. So does it really justify that you are enjoying strategic autonomy? Thank you.
Yeah, please.
My question is very simple, that why are we reification, why do we refine North and South, Global North? Countries that are in Global South will not remain in Global South forever. And the example is Singapore. So why can't we take a more dynamic approach rather than a very binary classification and revolve around that?
The definitions are problematic anyway, really problematic. So,
Okay, last question, and then we'll close up. Yeah, you connect the mic with Tave, please. Yeah. Okay. Choto correct to just 30 seconds, please.
Hello, dear speakers. Thank you for your addressing your country and your South Asian region and the Northern region. Well, I'm an architect. I'm working for disaster management in my country. Dr. Erin was addressing about the democracy theory, and Dr. Sanjay, he was addressing about the 4 policies we use with the Northern era. So my question is both to the speakers, especially Dr. Erin, that your country is not actually working for socio-cultural issues in my country. And when I see about southern region, the southern region, we have got lots of scholars, and we're not geotechnically developed yet. After the pandemic, for the recent 4 years, your country has no issues.
Can you please ask the question?
Yeah. I'm going to the question.
No,
just addressing the thing.
Just the question, please.
Okay. My question is to the northern, global north, how they are actually geotechnically supporting my country and the southern region. And the southern region, which is a hot pressure cooker, like there's the family base. We're not working culturally in our family side or sector. So what is the global north issues about the family practice for the southern part?
I've got a problem
Which is
with
very
the premise,
important.
which Australia did just give $150 million, I think, last week to Bangladesh. So
I mentioned
it's not giving
socio-cultural issues.
Okay,
It is.
thank you.
Yeah,
Yes,
yeah.
and
Thank you.
I head BRAC, and Australia is one of the largest strategic partner for us as well. So, but maybe the question around just not getting stuck in this binary and having a more dynamic definition quickly, and then.
I mean, I think I responded and made the point because I was very mindful of time that I actually think that the definitions are really problematic in the first place. So the premise of the whole question and talking about global north and south, I mean, there are other more modern ways to talk about this. I think the premise around dependency ratio, oh my gosh, now that's labour market statistics, but about dependency theory is still very much there. But if you look at dependency theory, that's even a lot more dynamic in and of itself in the way it defines countries, and countries can move in and out of different layers. So I think that you're absolutely right. We need to talk about it in a more dynamic way. Definitions are always problematic when they're so binary and so categorical.
Very brief. Foreign policy, of course, you are not aligned either or. You are taking independent stance on international issues, global issues. That is independent foreign policy. And I think what India, they had made significant changes in organizational within the country as well. It's a PMO-centric approach now, and they are taking very independent stance. Did not sided with Russia or America, and we have talked that we are law-abiding country, rule-based system, and there should be dialogue and discussions, and the conflict should be resolved. So I would find that we are maintaining strategic autonomy, but at the same time we are also having independent foreign policy. For sir, in fact, what I said that the global south, basically that they have to reimagine or they are reimaging or emanating from the global south that includes dependency theories, the notion of human development, and the principle of differentiating responsibilities. These are the 3 important tasks that the global south has to develop to have to come out from the global north's construct, domain or hegemon, in fact. And like in the globalization, I am giving you examples. You cannot decide and the nature, degree of or direction of globalizations, but you can have your weightage to determine the terms of your development, having collective approach and voices of the global south which is the global north. These are the submissions that I wanted to make. Thank you.
So much, my panelists, and really appreciate all your time. And I think, this is TBD. I think this sort of conversations are very, very helpful, particularly from as we there are rising tension, but at the same time, this tension can be constructive as well. So, and I want to conclude this panel, and at the same time, thank all of you for being a patient listener. Thank you so much.
done?
স্যার নিয়ে আসবে স্যার স্যার আপনি বসে যান Next, we have a plenary session, and the topic is Lessons from the Lockdown, Impact of COVID-19 Measures on Economy and Society. And we have some plenary members with us, and there, Mr. Faris Hadrovic, Business Development and Government Relations Professional, Bosnia and Herzegovina. Tashfin Ahmed, Vice Chairman, IFAD Group. Dr. Jamaluddin Ahmed, former General Secretary, Bangladesh Economic Association. Yoshikaji Kato, Research Fellow, Rakuten Securities Economic Research Institute, Japan. Mario De Pinto, Consultant in Strategy Public Policy and Communications, Italy. And Dr. Habibul Haq Khondokar, Professor of Sociology, Jayed University, UAE. And Sir will be moderating the session. Thank you.
Is it working? Hello. I just want to know for sure, is this a mistake that we are given 20 minutes? Because it's a full session. It's a plenary session. But it says 20 minutes over there. Yeah, so, no, if it's 20 minutes, then it's one thing. But if it's 40 minutes, yeah, so can you please change that clock? Yeah, thank you so much. So as moderator, as you have seen, moderator plays a role. So I'm going to read from this book. This is a book that we produced during the COVID, so you have to bear with me. But on second thought, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to let the panelists speak, and my job would be to keep time. So I'll start with the extreme right, and then we'll follow along this line. So the floor is yours, sir.
Thank you. Pleasure to be here. I'm sorry that we have to be between you and dinner. That's one of the worst sessions to be on, but thank you for coming and participating.
And you have 5 minutes.
Thank you. So lessons of COVID, a topic that has been covered on and on in the last 3 years extensively and widely. I would just like to it's an anecdote, actually. Earlier this year, Delta Airlines published a poll asking, as a way of promoting their destinations, they had a poll asking their participants and people on social media, what was the city that changed your life, alluding to destinations. And one of the most popular comments was Wuhan. And I think it is very true. It has definitely changed our life, maybe not in the way that Delta Airlines wanted it. But I'll be brief because we have a very short period of time. Some of the lessons that we've learned from COVID-19. We've learned that infections or infectious diseases are a whole of society issue. 1 in every 1,300 people alive in 2019 has died from COVID-19, unfortunately. The second lesson that we've learned is that we have remarkable abilities to produce medical, in this case actually vaccines. It was in record time, it was in 326 days since the genomic sequence to the authorization of COVID-19. Now there's talk of moving it down to 100 days for future possibilities of similar pandemics. Weaknesses in vaccine manufacturing and equitable distribution will definitely require change. And despite of the successes of the vaccine R&D, there have been persistent inequalities in access to it, in particular in allocation and in manufacturing. In this pandemic, we've seen that success in public health has depended both on the public's trust in government and a shared social contract among citizens. And we've learned the hard way that trust is very, very difficult to manufacture during a crisis. The other lesson is that government policy definitely matters, but it's also that individual behavior also maybe matters even more. And this dynamic played out in a couple of ways, starting with, particularly with lockdowns and the mask mandates in 2020. These were largely effective, but their effectiveness varied depending on how seriously the populations of certain countries took the rules, and therefore also hesitancy on vaccine was very high. Education was a very significant change during the COVID. Online learning proved to be, unfortunately, a very poor substitute for classrooms, particularly for disadvantaged groups and the poor. And as a result, we have a lot of students that are now left behind in many cases. The stress of that also boiled down in certain cases to political activism. The economic stimuli that was part of the COVID response by governments works, but it works only in concert with strong public health measures. Countries that struggled to control the virus initially suffered worse economic scenarios. And finally, one of the most important ones was that work will never be the same. Millions have quit, particularly women, and people who kept their jobs are questioning the old assumptions. A lot of work has moved online, and now employees, but also employers, see the world differently. And we're seeing some of the results in the sharpening labor shortages. That would be me.
Thank you very much.
Next.
Thank you everyone. Thank you, Mr. Moderator. It's a pleasure being here again. I would like to keep talking a bit what you were saying, and I would like to spend a few words on remote working. I'm a consultant and I work for a company which has adopted a full remote working model even before the pandemic, so I truly believe in it. I'll try to be as quick as possible. We saw that the remote working model has had many benefits for workers, companies and institutions. For instance, people can now save commuting time and commuting costs. We have companies who can access a really wide range of talent, and we have institutions who can benefit from more social inclusion. Think about the employment gap between disabled and non-disabled people that can be closed thanks to remote working, but also an increased tax revenue because company can save money, can hire more, can pay more taxes, and governments have also to pay less subsidies. So what are the key success factors that individuals, corporations, and countries, states, should take into consideration to make the transition smooth and effective? So first of all, individuals, people, workers, should learn how to deal with the new normal. They're now experiencing chronic isolation. They are working maybe often, maybe too often, alone at their home. So they have to put in efforts to make sure they go out, they use co-working spaces, they build interactions with other people. At the same time, companies have to build a completely new corporate culture, which should be made of relationships based on empathy, but that should also understand that people's preferences have changed. Now people want to fulfill their purposes. They want to work and live in line and according to their values. So companies should probably shift from extrinsic incentives to intrinsic one. What does this mean? This means that maybe until 3-4 years ago, if you wanted to make an employee happier, you could have just given him or her a corporate car. Now, not anymore. Think about what Google did, actually, some years before the pandemic. Google introduced the so-called 20% rules. The company gave its employees the chance to dedicate 20% of their working time, not personal one, to personal ideas and projects that could somehow benefit the company. And it was thanks to these initiatives that Google was able to launch services like Gmail, AdSense, or Google News. And then, what else should company do? How can they put in efforts to make sure that their employees are connected and close even when working far from each other? Well, they could launch new ways of collaborating. They can take advantage of technological tools. They can organize different events. And when it comes to technological tools, we have to mention the cybersecurity issue, as most of the cybersecurity attacks are people-based. So they take advantage of our weaknesses. So companies should also invest more in training their people and training their employees to avoid that in a moment of increased automation where we have great amount of data, these data are lost or stolen. And then we come to institutions and states. So first of all, they also have to invest in the technological and digital infrastructure, as this is the backbone of a remote working model. At the same time, they should provide the right legal framework. And this is not very easy. I want to tell you more about the Italian experience. So in Italy, when the pandemic hit, the government issued laws and directives to make sure that, let's say, companies and offices which worked with the public administration, as well as the small and medium enterprises, could implement that model as fast as possible. And it was actually a success. A lot of companies managed to do so in a short period of time. But at the same time, after these laws were issued and the transition was made, a survey was launched, and it found that actually for almost half of the entities involved in the program, they experienced increased complexities because they had to deal with paperwork and bureaucracy. So this is something we should be careful about. One last thing I would like to mention are the economic incentives. In general, countries, when it comes to remote working, can use them in two ways. For instance, Lombardia, which is an Italian region, gave around 5 million in non-refundable aid to companies who wanted to implement the remote working model. But then we also have the Colorado state in the United States that gave economic incentives to the companies which were hiring people working from the rural areas of the countries. So we saw the benefits of the remote working model. We should keep assessing them as well as its limitation. And probably one of the challenges we will deal with in the near future is the need for new social contracts, both between institutions and companies, as well as between companies and people. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Dr. Pinto. Now we turn to Dr. Kato.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for having me. And today I'm going to talk about China because I specialize China. And second, I think when we discuss the lesson of lockdown, I think as a case study, China cannot be absent. So let me talk about that. And first of all, let me be clear what happened in the past. At the very early stage, back to December 2019, the coronavirus was spreading in China, and even somebody say from China, and Chinese economy was shrinking 6.8% in the first quarter in 2020. But at the end of the day, China, under the Xi Jinping's administration, successfully contained the virus and accomplished the economic recovery, and eventually 2.2% in 2020. And And then Xi Jinping and China gradually but substantially emphasized, China led the world to contain the virus and recover the economy, and became more confident and even overconfident. And then, China is great accomplishment or something like that. And at that time, China started conducting so-called World War diplomacy. So this is what happened. And then what's happening right now? 3 years has passed. Now, in China, particularly over the last couple of days, more than 20,000 number of infected people. So the coronavirus was spreading again. And then the economy is continuously going down. Back to the data this year, from the first quarter, 4.8, 0.4, and 3.9%. And it is almost impossible to target their goal, 5.5%. So why this happened? I think the most fundamental reason is China's zero COVID policy. This is including the restrictions of mobilization and lockdown, PCR test, and border control, and quarantine. And these are undermining, in my perspective, 5 things. And this is very, very problematic for world economy. One is supply chain and investment, particularly real estate, and consumption among the citizens, and logistics, and most importantly, trust. I think now the world is gradually losing trust on China, like particularly the 2-month-long lockdown in Shanghai, the very important international business center. So this is, I think, unfortunate reality, and this is what's happening right now. And what will be happen in the future, foreseeable future? I think China will be consistent on zero COVID policy, although they are trying to make it more flexible way. But I think now there will be 4 uncertainties. One is economic downturn. This is a very uncertain issue. And second, social unrest. I think now people's anger is accumulating. And I think people's tolerance is not unlimited. So this is a kind of uncertainty. Third, lack of herd immunity and potential ineffectiveness of Chinese vaccination. I think this is, now we are discussing about among China experts. And fourth, politics. After the 20th Party Congress, Xi Jinping has again consolidated his power foundation. But it is a lack of check and balance, a lack of transparency, and this policy over COVID or economy has been done under this over-consolidated power foundation. And so politics is one more uncertainty. So these are, I think, what will be happened in the future. And finally, let me talk about implications for the rest, including maybe Bangladesh. I think 3 implications. First, figure out an appropriate and healthy balance between containment and economic recovery. So every country needs to pursue its own balance. This is very important, and a lesson from China's lockdown. Don't go extreme, particularly don't very quickly and often lock down, something like this. Don't go extreme. Make a point of balance, your own balance. And second, check again your effectiveness of herd immunity and vaccination. I think now, medically speaking, I think now these issues are becoming more problematic in China. So coronavirus issue is essentially it's a medical issue, public health. So this is quite important. And third, finally, be open-minded to learn lessons from others. Don't be isolated. Strengthen cooperation and communication beyond borders. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Dr. Kato, for keeping within 5 minutes. I really appreciate it. I turn to Mr. Ahmed, Tasneem Ahmed, and you have 5 minutes, please. Thank you.
Thank you very much. A very good evening to you all. Assalamu alaikum. I shall stick to the lens of speaking of, we shall look at this issue from the lens of Bangladesh. So that's how I have decided to share my spiel. So if we were to look at how beneficial has the government fiscal policy been during the height of the lockdown, the fact that we are all here today, some of you took planes to come visit here today. We have an audience full over here. This is a scenario that we could not have imagined just even a year ago. This, I'm saying, is just a testament as to the things that has worked right as far as fiscal policy implementation in Bangladesh is concerned. Yes, the side effect has been inflation, but the reality of today is much better. It's a much better alternative than what it would have been if the expenditures in healthcare and public consumption was not made. So in terms of Bangladesh, the best example of the benefit of a fiscal implementation is the transformation of the healthcare landscape of Bangladesh. See, before COVID, we didn't even have enough hospitals. We did not have adequate medical infrastructure to serve the entire nation. Since the pandemic, the government had spent money, had instituted many new hospitals with thousands of beds. They have advanced their IT infrastructure to provide medical services remotely and a comprehensive vaccine rollout. Now, as a country, we are much better prepared to deal with public health emergencies, a capacity that we did not have before, but now we have it today. So, in a sense, you can say that the pandemic was responsible for fast-forwarding our lives by 10 years at least. Because all the facilities that we see today, like remote learning, work-from-home culture, and remote services, would have eventually been a reality with the advancement of internet services, even if there was no pandemic. But it was the need of the times for us to adapt to such measures in order to continue survival. So in a sense, this pandemic had forced us to embrace technology today and see the gains of efficiency. And in the second part, what possible measures could have been taken better regarding fiscal implementation? So fiscal policy measures have done really well to increase consumption and thus prop up aggregate demand in the economy. But unfortunately, it did not seem to have an effective, it did not have very much of an effect in improving supply and production of goods. Let me give you an analogy of a Boeing 747. Imagine a flight lands in the airport, it's filled with passengers, it gets off, new passengers come in, and it flies off again. Now, what you will notice is that the aircraft never shuts off its engines. It's kept on idle mode. What is an idle mode? It's the mode that requires the least amount of fuel in order to keep operating. Basically, the reason I say this is because we needed to figure out how we could have kept the engines of our industry running and keep them in idle mode instead of allowing them to shut down completely, which has happened in our country and in most cases across small to medium enterprises. This is exactly what we have seen in the automotive sector. I come from that sector, so I'm drawing an example. See, the vehicle manufacturers are supplied with thousands of smaller components by ancillary industries. And parts such as nuts, bolts, seats, glass, etc. are served by smaller scale suppliers which does not have the appetite to withstand a recession. So once orders are stopped, the supply stops and eventually shuts down. So these smaller industry players did not have the capital to reinvigorate their businesses. So if we were to say in hindsight what we could have done better, or maybe to better prepare ourselves for the next pandemic, we really need to look at how we can prop up the supply side economics. Because you can give money to people to buy things, but if the money does not trickle down to the industries, they'll not be able to produce the things with which the consumers would buy. And therefore, you have the situation of a runaway inflation that we are seeing here today. So it's not only the Ukraine-Russia war, it's not only the incidents of the Ukraine-Russia war. This thing has been on a boiling pot for the past 2 years. And this is something that I think we should think about as we go down in the future. Thank you.
Thank you very much. This has been a miracle where all the presenters have kept to time and the moderator didn't give a long speech. Now, the floor is yours. Please ask your questions and please refrain from giving a mini speech. Just the question, please. And we have to learn how to ask questions, please. So if you give a speech, I will stop you. The lady over there.
Thank you for giving me the floor. So I'll just give a short question. That is, after the pandemic, we are seeing the global recession. And now we can say that in our country, from the perspective of Bangladesh, we have seen that the import has been banned or stopped, and import-export has been like stopped or getting stopped at very soon, and the LCs has been stopped, like making new LCs has been stopped. So what are your perspective regarding to combat such crises, like increasing the rate of dollars and the, like stopping of new LCs, making new LCs, and what will be the impact of the economy? We know that there will be a bad impact. So what's your perspective regarding my comment?
Thank you very much. I'll actually turn to Mr. Tasnim Ahmed because you are in business and you'd be able to
Thank
handle
you.
this question.
Well, the first point I would say, I would like to put my hands up in prayer that the Ukraine war ends as soon as possible. The reason I'm saying this is because I know you're talking about the lack of LCs, the lack of funds, that it's a global precipitation that's going on. What I would like to say is that we as businessmen really can't do much about it because it's the effect is on a global diaspora. But what I can tell you is that the days in the future do seem darker if the global community as a whole does not come in and step in and ameliorate the situation. If you're talking about trucks and buses, I can guarantee you right now, 60% of our logistics are not working right now. The reason they do not start their engines is because it costs them more money to complete a trip right now in the current situation due to the 40% increase in diesel prices. With that being said, with the recession in Europe, none of the garments orders are coming to Bangladesh right now. So since the garments are not producing, there is no requirement of logistics either. So it's a self-defeating spiral that we are in right now. And honestly, that's why I just said, I wish there was a crystal ball I could look at and give a prescription on how this matter can be solved. But I shall hope for is the global community to come together and find reason and a way to improve the current circumstance.
Thank you very much. Sir.
Now it's okay. I want to draw your attention to another side of the pandemic regarding statistics and information. Can I believe the statistics of death casualties in China or India or even Bangladesh? So I have a question that is the information we got from the government sources reliable or the actual? I can comment two things, like the system of getting information is also faulty in some countries, and some countries are likely to hide the information. So how we can construct the policy if we don't have the actual information? This is my...
I get the point. You are absolutely right. There was a very competent report. A number of reports came out towards the later end of the pandemic. In America, like as of today, the global statistics, the death due to pandemic is 6.6 million. In America, the death is 1.1 million. 1/6 of global death is in America. You look at the next country, India, 1.4 billion people, the death statistics is less than or about 500,000, 500,000. Now, very competent statisticians and public health researchers, they have come out with a figure for India, which is 4 million. So it's 4 times the American death toll. But actually, you have to count death by million. Per million, how many people died? Now, America has more than 3,000. Bangladesh has 2,275 or something, or 175. So there are a number of issues, but what you are saying, this has been recognized, that in countries of the so-called global south that we have been hearing about, they do not have the infrastructure for statistical services. They do not have, frankly, we do not have that. So we have to figure that in, and I think World Health Organization, Johns Hopkins, data bank, they are aware of that. But in terms of policy response, what should we do? We should anticipate that there are different kinds of statistics, but the broad policies that have been discussed, the fiscal policies and the other presenters. So I'll give my other panelists a chance to respond to your question, please,
sir. In my previous life, I've had an experience working directly with statistics, and it's very much true that depending on the methodology that you use, depending on the government policy and what they were trying to present, also depends largely on, I don't think that everybody around the world was very forthcoming in terms of being honest about the data. Not only that, but also the inability to collect statistical information. Now, the data that you've pointed out really largely don't make sense because of the larger population, and we know that Corona has affected most countries to a similar extent. There are certain differences, but I think that evaluations are still ongoing. I've read a few just recently. They vary in their analysis. The methodology is different. I think the methodology also used by different parts of the world is different, sometimes also not easily comparable. So I think that is going to be a topic of discussion it is already in the present, but it will be for the foreseeable future until this data is compiled and we have a better understanding both in terms of policies, effects, and other actually societal effects that as a result of the pandemic.
Now what I want to working. Now it's working. So my task now is to thank once again my wonderful panelists who kept to the time and my audience here who have shown a great deal of patience. Thank you all, and we end here. Goodbye. Sorry, because the time is up.
I would like to request our panelists for the group photo. Please come forward to the stage. Thank you.
Time মতো শেষ করছে না আমার প্রাইস
Thank you. Thank you.
We still have only one session left, so those who are leaving the room, kindly we're requesting you to wait for another 20 minutes, and after that we will go for dinner. And our next session before the dinner is an in-conversation between Dr. Nijamuddin Ahmed, Vice Chairman, Gavi CSO Steering Committee, and Dr. Mohammad Mainul Islam, Professor of Population Sciences, University of Dhaka, Bangladesh. And Dr. Muhammad Mainul Islam sir will be acting as the moderator.
Okay. Ladies and gentlemen, warm greetings to everyone. We are already running out of time, so I think our conversation will be very precise, and I hope you will enjoy this conversation. And you know that as a moderator, before that I would like to introduce myself. My name is Muhammad Mainul Islam. I work in Dhaka University in the Department of Population Sciences as a faculty there. So, but, and also we have one distinguished panelist, I will say, but our conversation will be the dialogue between Dr. Nizamuddin Ahmed, the Vice Chairman of CSO Constituency Steering Committee of the Global Alliance Vaccine Initiative, that is Gavi. Everyone knows about that one. And I think also I would like to say that Dr. Ahmed is also a public health specialist. My background is demography. I work on population studies, and one of the questions came out from the data. I was responding in a different way, but I think the data issues also relate to our conversation after a while. So Dr. Ahmed, as I mentioned to you, he's a public health specialist. He's also an executive director of the Shastho Shurakha Foundation and chief executive officer of the Synesis Health. So I think the conversation will be linked between public health, vaccination, COVID-19, displaced and vulnerable populations. So in that context, what I would like to say, dear audience, is that on November 15, just a few days ago, the world experienced 8 billion population in the world. And although you know that the growth rate of the overall population growth rate is declining, but size of the total population is still increasing. And unequal growth rate is experiencing all over the world in a different dimension, different ways. But the question is like that now, every year, every 12 years, 1 billion population is increasing in the world. Earlier it was taking a long time. But now, at this moment, as the size of the population will be increasing, and what we are thinking that these are numbers, but once we are talking about the numbers, also we need to think about the quality issues. So in that context, big numbers, big challenges, also big opportunities. But we definitely need to think about rights and choices of every individual. That is the ultimate motto of development, and rights should go together. So in that context, I think background, I would like to ask a few questions to Dr. Ahmed, and I think a distinguished audience and also raise some question later if you have time. But I have basically 3 to 4 questions to you, and I would request that if you briefly answer those questions, that will be easier to go there. So my first question is like that, as you know that you are working now on the vaccination issues, and you are involved with Gavi and also representative from our territory. So regarding one of the issues, like if you think about the WHO worldwide data, we think that unequal access in terms of vaccination. And if I give you the figure just from today from WHO website, what we have seen, that low-income country, they have actually, it's like only 20.98%. So if you think that every 5 people one, and what's about the high-income countries? If you think about it, that is 74.8%, and global level is 64. So definitely there is a regional imbalances up there, and Bay of Bengal area particularly, where the countries like Bhutan, Nepal, Thailand, Bangladesh, Maldives, Sri Lanka, India, Indonesia, East Timor, Myanmar, we have seen this thing. I mean, among these countries actually, some of the countries did very well. Like for Bhutan, even for, I would like to say, even for Thailand, and even for Bangladesh too, in compared to others, no doubt. But Myanmar position is like only 50%, 50.52%. So definitely lower income country and upper income countries, also regional imbalance we have. My now question to you first, question as an expert in the public health, why do you think such variations in terms of access to vaccination, and particularly how does the vaccination alliance like Gavi, work for developing countries through a combination of government and non-government organization and CSOs?
Thank you very much. I hope everybody can hear me as well. I think this is a pertinent question everywhere we face. When we say the Bay of Bengal conversation today, that illustrates very clearly we're connecting global, regional, and local. That's how the Bay of Bengal conversation today. And COVID, we have seen the responses of the COVID variation from the context, both from developed country to developing country, and also the different context as well. The specific question to answer why the world having such a disproportionate and differences in the vaccination at this point of time. Now, if you see that over 70% of the global population at least received one single dose globally, which is a great opportunity that people have the access to that. Second is also we need to really recognize that this is ever in the history of the mankind. The development of vaccine happened the ever fastest than what has happened in the past. Like, we talked, the previous session talked about within 362 days, the emergency vaccine comes into a life for prevention. And now it is coming to 100 days so that the scientist and the researcher and the associated industry and the professionals are working very hard. And even you would be happy to see 193 vaccine in pre-trial at this point of time. And 44 candidate of the vaccine in the first phase and 49 in the second phase. And globally now, 23 vaccines are in use at this point of time. The question is how fast we can get it. Living in Bangladesh and conference in Bangladesh today, I would say Bangladesh was smart, particularly the government was smart, to access the vaccine in the very fast space. So that you see Bangladesh second dose now over 75%, and the booster dose is over 50%. Many countries, due to the shock of COVID, not because of only the money and the access issue, because of the shock and traumatize and ability to reach to Gavi and other industry, they could not really be in the pipeline of the vaccine. So some of the country, even a high-income country, having a low coverage than low-income country in the world. So that is one of the things we have seen. The government policy matters, and that really take the vaccine to take forward. But also we have seen individual behavior matters. That's how the vaccine hesitancy came in. You have seen in Australia how late they started to receive the vaccine. It's a developed country, but now they're in the pace again. So there are always issues of the policy decision of the government of the host country, as well as people acceptance to receive the vaccine as well. We usually forget to, always we are very happy to talk about more supply, but we forget about the demand creations. And so that we always talk about now that supply could be available, but people may not be interested to take the vaccine. And we have seen the example in the world. So that's how the mobilization and also in the national policy guideline has prepared globally in the world.
But also resource constraints also a matter in some
Absolutely.
context, right? So now next question to you regarding the context of data, because I think one of the participants raised about these things, and we are really thinking about the quality of the data. So in that context, we have seen in the Bay of Bengal region, particularly during the COVID, causality death was very high in India. And if you think about the total number of figures, then we have seen Indonesia, then Thailand, and then comes to the Bangladesh is like infected. It's like 2.03 million people infected. But the question is regarding the death rate, not the infection. So in death rate, we found it in Bhutan, it was only 21 cases. But for Maldives, like 311. I know that these are very small country, but it's okay. But Nepal is like 12,109. Sri Lanka is like 16,793. But in context of Thailand, Indonesia, and India, the number is much higher. And once the WHO in May launched a report on excess mortality due to pandemic, and that rate was showing that actually the states of what they referred, it is 2.7 times higher death rates or causality deaths experience. So in that context, we found that some of the countries didn't accept the findings, like India, even our Bangladesh too. But the question is, like, we know that these are the are the tested cases. There are also death happens due to different indirect estimation, causalities of death are also happening there. In that context, also we see in a general perspective, like WHO statistics showing that 6 out of 10 deaths, 6 deaths are not reported till at this moment in the time when we are talking about the digitalization. So in that context, how do you see the dispute among member states of WHO and COVID causality, particularly these figures? And what do you think about the quality of data and availability regarding policy formulation? And we need really to ensure good quality and availability of data for making better policy formulation. So would you kindly respond shortly?
Thank you. There are 2 aspects of this question. One is related to quality of the data. The second is the ability to produce the data. If you look at the regional country or global situation, which we have seen from public health analysis, it's very clear the ability of the country is the first requirement for responding to any pandemic. Like in Bangladesh and many other countries, like as you mentioned, do not have right surveillance system in place. And in many countries, even in developed countries, are not really ready. The speed of COVID really put people into the stress for expanding and developing the system. So the surveillance system is not as such ready to report properly the actual number of the cases. That is why the public health estimation now is 3 times higher than what is being reported. Right. Second part is the quality of the data depending on the people who are working here and in the system. So I think that's where we need to, this is one of the lessons I would say learned from the COVID, that every country, we should not forget that the pandemic is over. We are not yet get out of pandemic COVID. We are within the COVID still. Right. And we're talking about now readiness for the next pandemic.
Right, right.
So this is the lesson that each country has to take to rebuilding and redefining the health system if they want to continue to respond in the future.
Okay, that's fine. Very good to know. And now the next question to you regarding, you know that 1.3 million Rohingya people are in Bangladesh at this moment. That means these are Bangladesh government treated them as a forcefully displaced Myanmar national, that is FDMN. So if you think about these, one of the crowded places in Cox's Bazar area, so highly dense situation there, no doubt, but Bangladesh is doing extremely well regarding treating them. But the question still remains regarding Rohingya issues. I found that they have the highest number of TFR. That means total birth rate is quite high. Even the uses of contraception in terms of family planning is quite low. And if they live in Bangladesh for a longer, another 5 or 10 years, every year around 30 to around more than 30,000 Rohingya newborn babies are born there. So in that context, actually, how do you think about management of their family planning or reproductive health care services in that places? Are we on the right direction?
I would say that Bangladesh so far doing very good. This is the largest refugee population in the world, the ever largest in the history. And a country like Bangladesh, developing country, smaller country, is managing this 1.2 million population with the basic things, and the prevention and quality of the life can be improved. I'm very optimistic having the ability of Bangladesh to expand, like managing the Rohingya populations. And there are collaborative work between government and private sectors and the civil society as well. A particular point, as you mentioned, TFR rate is very high. If we see the pattern from the Rohingya population in their past, they are not used to and neither exposed to access to the family planning devices or any contraceptive or prevention methods. So this is a new learning for them, which is probably we need to create the demand so that people can really get mobilization and understand better, and so linking with the supply system as well. So that's what government is trying to work with international community and the national organizations and the CSOs and the local government in the Rohingya community.
Well, thank you. So the thing is that, still a lot of things need to do, multi-sectoral collaboration are needed there, no doubt we understand. But now you see in Bangladesh at this moment, the time when we are talking and discussing, Bangladesh has experienced last 50 years of independence. In terms of public health progress, definitely you can see that major changes. So just can say 2 or 3 example in a very brief, because we are short of time. They will go for lunch, I think distinguished audience, lunch, sorry, for dinner. So I think if you can categorize the 3 example areas of what can take lesson from Bay of Bengal, other areas from Bangladesh. What do you think?
Thank you very much. This is very interesting question. At the age of 50 years of a country, and Bay of Bengal Conversation lessons learned, one of the first lesson I would say, this is being disseminated, that's the prevention of death among under 5 children, maternal death, and due to the utilization of the vaccination program in Bangladesh. That is how our Honorable Prime Minister, being rewarded by Global Alliance for Vaccine Alliance, Gavi, in 2018 as a vaccine hero in the world. So that's the first lesson, and Bangladesh is exporting trained human resource to all over the world now for expanding the vaccination program in Africa and in other countries as well. The second lesson, I would say, the population control and TFR, as you mentioned. If you look at 1970, it was 7.2 TFR, and now it's 2.1 TFR. So that's a significant decline, not because of only family planning program, but also the understanding of the population has increased, access has been increased, and service has been increased, and health sector has worked quite tremendously. And we know that 6,000 population having an access to one health worker. That is the second significant achievement, I would say, in Bangladesh. Third one, prevention of number of epidemics in this country. 2 epidemics we have faced. One, all of we know, in 2000, the HIV epidemic came in Bangladesh as well. So it was 7.5% in Bangladesh. Now it's getting to under 1%. That because of very integrated, coordinated response by the government and participation of the civil society, private sector, and the citizen as well. So that's a third example where...
Well, thank you very much. I think 3 important messages you have already mentioned, but I think if we make a link with different way, like still maternal mortality reduction is a big challenge for Bangladesh, because only 8 years we have at this moment, but we need to make a reduction into 70. How will progress? I think that's a big question. Another one, TFR is stagnant at this moment. CPR is already, definitely we have a very good performances, but now since 2011 to now it's almost stagnant, and adolescence fertility rate is quite high. Even child marriage issue is a major concern for Bangladesh, which will actually interrupt not only reproductive health, also for other sustainable development goals also impacted there. So I think we are going to close our conversation, but do you like to ask any question to me?
I would just...
or an audience can also ask one question, I think, because we are closing our interaction.
Thank
Please.
you. I will just want to make one more comment. Like all of you need to understand that work and the world never be back to 2018. Never and ever. We are in 22. We are not going to get the life back in 2017. The way we move, the way we had social life, way we have personal life, nothing going to come back. So we need to believe that by heart. From the public health perspective, we are seeing the future. If we want to live better, we need to prepare better. That is why we are saying preparedness on the health system. So help people to get better life. Second part is also, we should not really forget, health is one part. But we need to really look more on comprehensive and integrated way to be more efficient and more effective.
Right.
So that the more collaboration, more partnership, government and private sector is very, very essential.
Absolutely. I think definitely government and non-government organizations, they should come forward together. No doubt, in terms of development, if you think about the changes in Bangladesh society, it's not only government alone have done it. Definitely non-government organizations and also other CSOs, they work together, and it's to work together, like for vaccination program, even for family planning program, what you mentioned. But the question, I would like to close the interaction here, but dear audiences, it's a short introduction and interaction between Dr. Nizamuddin Ahmed and me, but you see, just we are 8 years ahead of SDGs. We have 169 targets And out of 169 targets, how many targets can be achievable? Data is one of the important problem. And like I would say, only 37% data are publicly at this moment readily available. And most of the data are not available yet, not only for Bangladesh, but also for the Bay of Bengal regions area. So we need to produce data, and based on the data, policy making and implementation and intervention should be ensured. But at the end, what I would like to say, the message of Sustainable Development Goals, leave no one behind. We are progressing, we are developing, but still inequality persists in the society. Still, subgroups of populations are varied in terms of the quality of life. To me, the development means to enhance the quality of life of the people. Not only economic growth, not only GDP's growth, but real choice and rights should be ensured at the individual level. What we are saying, that rights and development should go together. So with this, I think I would like to thanks to our interactive partner, I will say, and Dr. Nizamuddin Ahmed for giving a wonderful time here. And thank you very much for giving your patience here, those who are here, and we made the conversation, and you, I think, you have experience. And thank you very much. Let's go for a dinner now, I think. Yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you.